Greetings and welcome to a very special Unveiling Reality. The Outer Veils series continues. This will be episode 2. Thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. With me tonight, my co-host, Shelly Talking Trash and Truths, is here to join us for this exploration out into the Outer Veils. And we thank each and every one of you for being here. Big thanks to those awesome people in the Winner Circle who are part of the solution and support us on a monthly basis. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much for supporting the channel. And a big thanks to Shelly and Wolfram, who also support us over on Rumble as well. We are broadcasting live tonight on Rumble X and YouTube, and away we go. All right. Tonight, as we go into the Outer Veils, what are the Outer Veils? We have to recap that and talk about that real quick. It's the bigger questions in life, the bigger ones that veil, that are outside that a lot of people don't think about. They may question it every now and then. They may wonder every now and then. They may have easy answers that they settle on, but we like to go deep into the exploration of these topics and try to get ourselves some kind of very succinct and direct answers to these. And so we investigate a lot of different aspects of this, and we'll get more of that in a minute. But Shelly, say hello to everybody.
Hi, everybody. How are you? Hope everyone's doing well on this lovely Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Notice I have my tinfoil hat on. There's aliens in the background of the new Avatar.
Kids. Which we won't be doing any of tonight, but
I know, but I wanted to wear it.
There you go. There she has it. She's on there. And this is big brain. This is the kind of like the big brain stuff for people who like to ask the bigger questions in life, and that care about these things. I mean, and that's kind of like what drove Chris Langan, the 200 IQ gentleman, one of the highest recorded IQs ever, to come up with this this theory he has. Is called the CTMU, and that stands for Cognitive-Theoretical Model of the Universe. And some people may think, well, it's going to go against God. No, he actually doesn't do that at all, which is what's really interesting about this model. It kind of includes everything. It's managed to account for these things without excluding God or devil or good, evil, or breaking a lot of the rules. Like, he's put a lot of thought into this, and his drive to do so is much like my drive as well, which is why when I listened to this for the first time, I was kind of amazed. I was like, wow, he came up with a lot of the same kind of conclusions I have, and conclusions are I don't want to say conclusions, but points that I have. Only he doesn't. He's much more granular in the mechanics of it, whereas I don't know that I've gotten to that granularity yet, but hearing his explanations for things adds to that. However, I still did see the shape of things, as I think, in the same way, and how things work out as you start to break down the issues in society, in the world, and things you meet, and the things that you have challenges in your life, and so on. You tend to see that things divide up into good and evil, and intention, and things like that. It's kind of like where I've kind of come to on some of this. And I'll show you we're gonna go back to the board here in a minute, and I'm just going to reintroduce the Outer Veils again. In our first episode in the series, we just did a little exercise, which I kind of recreated a little bit in the promo tonight, and that is just to understand that our lives are short in comparison to the age of this universe we live in, this 3D universe, and that we are incredibly small and micro on the scale of this 3D reality universe. Also, in that, how incredibly special it is just to be matter in this universe, as most of it is not, and to be conscious matter is beyond special. It is truly a blessing to be conscious in this universe. No matter how many others there are out there that we don't know about, that doesn't matter. It's the fact that you are here and you're conscious today, and that is a very extremely special thing to be in this universe as compared to the rest of it. So that's the point there. Let me say hello to this awesome crowd, the VIPs here in the front row, people that are coming to learn more and dig deeper about reality itself. And that's really what the outer rails are about. It's about the overarching drivers of reality and a better understanding of where the hell we are and what the hell we're doing and what happens after all this is over. Right? That's the big questions out there. But hey, Heidi, how you doing? Thanks for holding us down over there on the Rumble side with those. And more from my friend. Thank you for being here. Thank you for dropping these links. Remember, guys, when you're here, always listen to the Whoop. He knows what he's talking about. He wipes his paws and he loops in and he howls. And that's how you know the Alpha Mod's in the house and we are up and rolling. Wolfram's going to be, he got himself into some jury duty somehow. So he might not be around next week unless he gets dismissed early. You know how to do that if you want to. Just tell him zebra alert, zebra alert, zebra alert. Tell him that tell him that your Stephen Greer sent you. Maybe that'll get you out of it. Yeah, the alien sent me here. We'll get you out of that jury duty somehow. Snipe, what's up? How you doing? On the YouTube side tonight. We're gonna stick around on YouTube. I don't think we're gonna have any issues with this broadcast. So we're gonna stick around on YouTube tonight. We're not gonna jump like we normally do on Sunday nights. We're gonna keep this all together. So we can add to our playlist, our ongoing series as we address these bigger questions, like, you know, and it's interesting I came across this because I have been lately talking about the good and evil and the existence of it and what is the point of this battle? How does it work? And this again, this theory brings some very interesting perspectives on that as well as what is God is, the devil, and what happens after death, what is purpose of life, these bigger outer veil questions. But let me get through saying hello to everybody here before I go off on that. Snapu, what is up? How you doing? Good to see you. How you been? Welcome to the show. We got Cynthia Fireflies over there. Steaks and beers for everybody. Thank you, Cynthia. How you doing? How you doing? Good to see you guys. I'm glad. I'm glad you're up to 52 subs, man. Keep it up. Do it the right way. Don't take any shortcuts. I'll tell you what, I've earned every one of these um, subs that I have, and every view and every thumbs up is a earned one. Um, do it the right way, man. So keep fighting, show up, get it done, get better at what you're doing along the way, so that you do have a quality, highest quality up to your standards delivered to your crowd as they amass over the time you spend building your channel. I don't get these people who do it the wrong way. That eventually will come back to bite you in the ass if for those who do it. It does come back and bite them in the ass in a very bad way. And there's those of us that are honest and those of us that aren't out there. But anyways, fight the good fight, stay honest, do it right. That's my advice for you, man. It will come in time, and it will be what it should be for you. All right. Yes, indeed, indeed. All right. Shelly, you excited to listen to this tonight and hear about this?
I'm very excited.
You like talking about religion. You grew up like a lot of stuff. So this will be real good. We talk about that kind of stuff often, and we like to just explore these topics. So we'd like to do that. Here is the outer veils, right? So you guys know about the inner veils. Not, oops, don't even do that. What are you doing? No. Okay. But the outer veils consist of 6, 7, 8, and then what's beyond. And really, we're going to be focusing on all of these tonight in one way, shape, or form. Mainly 7 and 8, and then outside to the unknown, and the unknown questions, the big questions, right? But these are the ones you're going to be tackling. And as you go in, these all have an effect on what we deal with in our base reality here. And then we get into all these other things that we talk about, that the current version that we're dealing with, how it got there, what are the elements of it, and so on, right? The subversive elements of the veil's perception. This is current. This is not static. This is just the current situation here. But the thing about the outer veils is that these are static. These are more static. So we just try to figure out what these are. And I kind of define these as going into what are the overarching drivers of reality? And these are fun questions. Not for everybody. It's for people who really want to know the bigger answers in life and what we're after. And you know what? You got a little bit of time, so why not think about it with us tonight? And we'll pose some interesting questions about what this could all be, right? Um, and that can help you in your journey to understanding your life and your reality and your philosophy much better. And that's what it's all about. Big brain, big questions kind of night. And feel free to please articulate your views and as we hear the different information coming in. But we will be talking about a lot of these things. And I will point out that talking about how things come about. I've often said this whole idea of how made in the image of God and religion comes about. I always said, well, it's a shortcut to thinking, I think, to believe it's a physical image, right? I've always thought of it more as a spiritual image or an energetic image, or as it being a piece of God, which still makes it all relative. It doesn't make it blasphemous. So this, of course, you're a controlling religious organization that doesn't want anybody to question you. But
sounds accurate.
Yeah, well, what we're talking about here is really just our relationship with God and how that works out, right? And if we're made in the image of a piece of, I've also often talked about how being an image doesn't mean that you're it doesn't mean that you are an identical copy of, but more of like a micro fragment of, and that our job is in this life is to go through the challenges and remain in the light and remain as one would say, as Christ-like as possible, or in the light, so that we can return to the source one day, right? And that may bend some fundamentalist types out of whack when they hear that. But I have to question why be a fundamentalist type, right? I there was a very I've run into fundamentalist types. There's a very feminized male that was once hanging around that used to prance around and spaz out and freak out about things. And he's pretty much, a well groomed, grifted conspiracy guy. But at the same time, anything that varied from his fundamentalist religious viewpoint, he would deem as cultish or satanic or something like that. Very closed-minded, very weak individual. But anyways,
I'm still waiting for you to indoctrinate me into your cult, but it's just
yeah. I was accused of having a cult at one time. No, I'm just trying to figure out how this thing all works, man. And I think there's a lot to be learned. And if you don't ask questions and if you don't think for yourself, you'll never be able to figure that out. And if someone's using fear or threats against you to keep you in their / cult, whatever it is, you have to question them as well. But anyways, with that, thinking about that, I'd never heard of Chris Langan and the CTMU till recently, and I came to find out that a lot of his perceptions on things matched mine in a lot of ways without ever having known about him. Like I said, he's a lot more granular in a sense than my explanations are here on the board or anywhere. But this has been his dedication. His dedication has been to the outer veils, while mine's been more to the inner veils. But I recognize what the outer veils are. And he kind of constructs them a lot of the same way, a little variance here and there. But it's funny how two different people from two different places and different approaches to this, at least different approaches to life in general, could end up in the same place. So that right there raises my eyebrows and says, maybe there's something to this stuff that you inevitably, if you use logic and follow things to their conclusion and continue to question and continue to keep an open mind, that you'll come to these conclusions yourself. So I wanted to bring this to you guys in a special Outer Veils special tonight so we can go through this together, and you can hear this as well. That's not something that a lot of people have been dialed into or have heard of before. It might not be something that people are even excited about clicking in on on a daily, right? So if I bring it to you and say, hey, let's do this together, they might be more interested. So that's what we're gonna do. And hey, how you doing? Heart Heart is home. What's going on? Welcome to the show. How you doing, Heart is home? Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. I saw Arby. Arby came in as well. How you doing, Arby? Good to see you, Arby. Welcome to the show. Anybody else sneaking in here while I was sitting there talking? All right, cool. I'm so happy you guys are here tonight. We're gonna have a lot of fun, and we're gonna do this by having a kind of general intro into this. If you guys feel like this is there's a lot of interviews with this guy out there. I picked one that's I think is kind of like, a good dive into it, but also entertaining, kind of entertaining as well. So let me kind of cue this up. All right. Oh man. Is my
Hello. Hello.
Let's fix this a little bit. I'm about to jump off here and not jump off, but I will.
Yeah, go ahead. It's okay.
Not right now. Sit in a minute. Right. Okay, hold on. Get this queued up. All right. So that's what we're doing. Good. How's everybody doing this evening? Butler, Pennsylvania here. Snowy and cold. That's what I hear.
Oh, you're only like what, half an hour, 20 minutes from me. No. Very awesome. I'm not saying where I am, but I'm near Edinburgh. There you go.
She just said where she is. All right.
No, that's not where I'm at.
In between the A and the T.
Near.
Yeah, it's cold here.
If somebody wants to come get me, come on now.
Down south as well, but we ain't got any. We're not snowing or anything like that. It doesn't seem like that's going to happen here. No, I don't see anything like that happening. It might. Hey, it'd be cool if it did. Blue Lantern, how you doing? Good. I'm just walking this in here. We're gonna get started here shortly. I just wanted to make sure that everybody got here for the start. This could be the Michael Knowles interview. It's about 2 hours long. There's only one section I'm gonna skip in this, and that is the section about UFO and aliens, and we're gonna skip ahead on that one. We put it this way. I don't want to hold things up. All right. Is okay, and I want to say this too. 200 IQ is impressive, right? It's an impressive IQ number, but I want to go out by saying that while I find it an impressive IQ number, I also don't think that anybody with a high IQ knows everything, has it all right, or is complete in their journey to intelligence and learning and enlightenment or whatever, right? It just means that they have a high capacity for things, and that can be appreciated. But just because someone has a 200 IQ, I don't think that that means that they got all the answers. But so, and like there's just as, and everybody's still just as it's just as able to be exploited by the human brain OS, by people who know how to do it, as anybody else. It just depends on how much where your focus is, and his focus is on these particular things. But as far as the UFO alien rabbit hole goes, if I was ever to speak with him about it, I would have an interesting conversation with him. Let's put it that way. He's not bought into anything per se, but we differ to a point where I don't think that it's going to be valid for this conversation we're having. Also, I don't think it really applies. Like it's kind of a sidetrack conversation that they have. But he tends to believe because there's so many reports, there has to be something to it, and I don't believe that. So I believe that it's easy to. You guys know my thoughts on it. That it's easy to corrupt people and to get people to start believing they see things or just to report things for different reasons. And he seems to kind of like go with the explanation. Well, if there's a lot of it, or there's smoke, there's fire, kind of thing. I'm like, you can simulate a smoke and fire. So But
Like, if there's
that's a
so many things, it
conversation,
must be true.
right? Well, I mean, that's a conversation him and I could have one day, and I think it would be interesting. And I think I would bring ideas to the table that might actually persuade him into looking at it differently. As in, okay, so because there's that many reports, there must be something to it. Okay, then Bigfoot's for real, because there's been more reports of Bigfoots than UFOs over the years, or
I
things
have
like
video.
that, right? But I don't know that anybody's ever challenged him on that. And I always start with the premise that there's no substantial proof aliens have ever visited the planet. So I'm like, you got to start there with me. And I think everybody needs to start there, actually, because once you eliminate that from the table, the rest of it is obvious, right? The rest of it's obvious. And so if you can't prove that base root premise, right, then anything else that comes after it is just, what it is. You can see through it. They haven't been there. Then what is it? Right. I'm sure people will get into the interdimensional things. Well, if you ever seen interdimensional travel, have you proven that? We don't know if that's true either. Right. Root premises. Okay. But anyways, that's neither here nor there for tonight's topic of conversation. And IQ measures various things. So if you score super high in one area, you can be unbalanced in the view on how smart you are without knowing what area concept you saw. So yeah, it's true.
I have 162 IQ. That don't mean shit.
I think it's likely there's life outside of the universe. I tend to agree with Hawking's stance that if advanced intelligence found, it would either be like us meeting the Indians or a zoo. Yeah, I mean, I also don't think that they would sneak around and put on light shows in the sky for entertainment either. Like,
look
they either have
look at me being stealthy.
They'd have a no contact, no interference kind of thing, or they just come on down. What are you going to do about it?
They coming down to pick a fight? I mean, I would.
I mean, if they wanted something here, I guess they could, right?
Yeah.
Or they just wanted to connect, But you got to connect by dancing around and talking to people like Stephen Greer.
Pass.
Right? You're not going to do. That's not the way to connect. That's not it.
No.
And I think intelligence gathering and logical approaches to things is what it is. But
you can make a new thing. Connect.
And be like, yeah, let's just take a look at how we handle it, right? How do we handle it when we go to other planets right now? Not knowing what we're going to find when we show up. We've been to Mars, recently to Jupiter, other places, on the unmanned crafts, observational or gathering intelligence about the atmosphere, about the planet itself, looking for things, right? But not hiding ourselves by doing it. And we're not putting on a light show in the sky either. Like, let's go dance around. Let's go this way. Let's go that way. Doing ridiculous things. Come on. We digress. See, I think our planet was hidden from the universe until we started exploring nukes. like in the Battlestar Galactica, they gave up their position to the Cylons and they exploded a nuke. Let's see. My guess is of the cultures in the universe, once they reach what we would count for as a Kardashian scale. Kardashian scale. Kardashian 1, 2, or 3. Oh, that's that Me Too Kaku thing. I think we discovered something similar. That's Galactic Federation of Light stuff, isn't it? Let's see.
God, this is all so over my head.
Yeah, I don't. I just think that I just don't think that anybody's been here. I don't think you need to complicate it that much. Either if they have, they just kept going, and we've seen civilizations like this before, so we keep on going. Or they just haven't been here yet, maybe there's just no reason. Gotta get the proof they've been here first. We can imagine anything, we can imagine it all. It's really easy when you don't have answers to imagine things and fill in the gaps with stuff. Well, it's nice to think they're on the way, right? That'll bring some excitement into our lives. I mean, if they are, they are. Okay, let's put it this way: if we're ever gonna meet up with an alien species, intelligent alien species that way, then yeah, technically speaking, they would be on the way, right? Or we would be on our way.
Look at that. That's amazing.
Oh, sweet. That's awesome. Tell us which one.
Love that.
I love that show. That was like, oh, as a kid, we get so excited to watch that. Oh my God.
Never saw
Yeah.
it. Heard a lot about it, but that wasn't something to let us watch in the house.
Are you assuming they're going to enslave you, Blue Lantern? That's a conclusion on that too, right? There's a little Hollywood going on there. Anyways, all right, we're about 30 minutes in. It's got to be one thing or another, right? We're gonna eat our brains. Brains. Never tasted it before, but that's what we want. That's what we're after.
They can show up. I mean, I'm all up for probing. It's been a slow couple years.
Shelly's gonna volunteer to get probed for all of us.
Do it for science. It's for science.
It's for science.
For humans. All right. Humankind everywhere.
You're welcome. This thing going. Are you guys ready to spin it up? Let's go. All right. We're gonna do it like this tonight, I think. We'll do it like that. And let's review this awesome interview. You guys got everything now ready? All right, here we go. And we're gonna go at regular speed and let's get this. Hold on, what?
That's all I'm saying, Blue.
RB. All right, let's get this thing started. All right, you ready? Let me see.
True.
Let's go.
Very true, RB.
I know people are going to be asking, why is the smartest man in the world living on a farm in the middle of Missouri?
Because it's the show me state.
Welcome to my extremely ethereal and trippy new set. I feel as though I am floating in a cloud here in this all-white venue, and perhaps that is fitting for this first interview in a series of much longer, much more in-depth interviews. I'm so excited that my first guest is Christopher Langan, the smartest man in the world. I do not say that as a subjective statement or to flatter Chris. I mean that in as technical a way as possible. Chris has one of, if not the highest IQ ever recorded, somewhere between 190, 195, and 210. And Chris is not here by way of some fancy, distinguished professorship at such and such brand name university, nor did Chris just get off of his private yacht out of the south of France and come here to leave his billion-dollar company. Chris came here from a farm in Missouri after a career as a bouncer at bars around New York. Chris,
you decide.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for inviting me, Michael.
Hey,
Iris, how you doing?
Stumbled on you when I was 18 years old, freshman in college, and listen, I barely got out of high school math. I barely got out of calculus. So
I got out of high school myself.
That's a good point. But I said, this guy, he's saying things that are really, really interesting. And so I want to learn more. I've wanted to talk to you ever since then. I know that before we get into metaphysics, the existence of God, free will, politics, culture, and everything in between, I know people are going to be asking, why is the smartest man in the world? Why is he not just buying and selling all of us all the time? Why is he living on a farm in the middle of Missouri?
Well, that's a good question. And it's that I was never actually interested in money. When I was a kid, my brothers and I, my family, we were not exactly the richest folks in town. We seldom had enough money to buy, food or clothes. And so I sort of immersed myself in books and reading and decided that what I wanted to do was pursue knowledge. It costs you nothing to pursue knowledge, really, provided you can sustain yourself while you're in pursuit of it. So that's what I did. I simply focused myself on, I want to know the truth about reality. I want to know, what kind of world it is that I'm living in. And that's what I went for. Now, as far as the making money is concerned, one thing that I found out is that there are certain ingredients, certain advantages that you need in order to become rich. Of course, it helps to be born with money.
That's the easiest way.
And it helps to have a lot of connections.
Yeah.
Okay, the right kind of connections. And it helps not to alienate the people who have all the money, because then they'll exclude you and cancel you. That's what they do. That's what cancel culture is. Yeah. Basically, people are being frozen out of the economy. Yeah. Okay, and I found myself getting frozen out of the economy that way from an early age. I mean, I tried to go to college, but ran into a couple of problems. Personnel problems on the faculties of the colleges in question. And that stopped me. That basically when you get, when you can't get a college education, you are canceled economically.
And presumably, though, you show up to college, even though you've got a tough upbringing and not any real advantages in terms of family or society, but you're obviously you've got a higher IQ than anybody in the room. You're obviously extremely smart. You're extremely self-educated. So you get into college, it should be a total breeze for you.
Well, it was a total breeze for me. Too much of a breeze for me. You ask the wrong kinds of questions of people who are full of themselves and think they have all the answers. In a calculus class, say, well, why don't you explain exactly what an infinitesimal interval is and how you can traverse from one end to the other? And, they'll look at you as though you've got two heads.
I ask that all the time. I ask my waiters.
Well, I got a very poor reaction out of that. There was a math instructor in Albert Leisenring, I think, who decided that I must be absolutely brain dead. I mean, I went into his office, This guy was a very strange character. He was about 6.5 feet tall. He'd come into class, everybody would be waiting there for him. He'd make a late entrance, be waiting for 10, 15 minutes. He'd walk in, right, with this great big stack of mimeographed sheets. And then he'd hand out, walk around the room methodically handing out these sheets to all of the students. And everybody would have a sheet in front of him. Then he'd walk up to the room and symbol for symbol, everything that was written on the sheets would appear on the blackboard. Then he'd turn around and walk out. Now, finally, I thought, I was having a hard time with this. There were certain things that I, didn't quite understand why he was doing them the way he was. So I kept on trying to track him down to his office. He was never in his office. I would wait in the hall for, hours and hours for this guy. I never showed up. Finally, I caught him in his office. And I said, "Hi, Professor Leisenring, can I come in?" He said, "Well, I'm really kind of busy right now." And I just wanted to ask you one question. Why do you do this? Why are you taking a set theoretic approach to the calculus like this? I mean, they don't seem to be compatible. On the one hand, the calculus deals with change, whereas sets are static things. Why are you taking this particular approach to it? And he looks at me and he's, Asperger's victim, right?
Yeah.
And looks at me, looks down his thing. He says, "Well, some people just don't have the mental firepower to be mathematicians." Well, what was I supposed to do? Hit the guy? I wanted to hit him.
Right. But he says something that's sort of pathetic almost to say. And so,
it is pathetic, but it basically told me a lot about how he sees the world, how he sees other people. I don't want to take a course from a guy like that.
Yeah.
And it offended me because I was, I'd been a poor kid. I just came off a ranch. I'd been working all summer punching cows, and there I was, amid all these, there was a bunch of hippies in there.
Right.
Basically New York hippies. No, I won't call them hippies. These are basically affluent kids from New York. The place where I went was basically, that was the clientele. That was the student body, right? And they all couldn't, they all were constantly talking, asking questions, bright for the most part, but I felt like a fish out of water, right? It was culture shock for me.
Yeah.
What is this? I'm used to, being around a bunch of, hayseeds, cowboys, punching cows, going to the, bar at night or whatever, drinking beer. And it was nothing like that. These kids were sitting around smoking pot, doing drugs, psychedelics.
Now, just to clarify, when he says not everyone has the power to be a mathematician, was this an admission of his own failure to explain his process?
Oh, no,
he's calling you stupid.
Yes.
Wow.
He was claiming that I didn't have the intellectual firepower to be a mathematician, or at least that's the way I interpreted it.
Yeah.
And because I was used to being slighted in that way. I mean, I kind of grew up in a rough and tumble. If people feel intellectually threatened by you, you get a lot of this kind of thing out of them. So I assumed that that's what was happening, and I've never heard anything after that would lead me to believe anything different.
So you leave college, presumably you're much more intelligent than anyone that you're going to meet on the faculty or in the students. So you leave college. What is it about being a bar bouncer? What is it about that physical activity? Because presumably, even without a college degree, you could have done some middling paper pushing job, and it probably wouldn't have been very lucrative or fulfilling for you. But presumably, you could have done something like that instead of a tough, physical, potentially dangerous job like you're being a bouncer.
Could have, but there are certain problems. I can't. For example, when I was in New York, I got a job in a grommet factory. Okay, it was Stimson grommets. You had Grumman aircraft there.
Yep.
And they got military defense contracts. I think they were working on F-16s at one point. And then there was Stimson grommets, which produced these aircraft rivets for these airplanes. And I had this machine, and man, the sound, the noise from this machine, wham, wham, wham. No hearing protection, no nothing was issued to anybody.
Yeah.
And I started, like losing my hearing and so forth. And I figured, well, I can't stand this anymore. I got to get out of here. So I was about to leave, but I had a girlfriend, and she said, no, I want you to stay. So I figured, okay, let me see if I can get under the kind of job. So I went and took the civil service exam and was offered a job by the IRS. And that, of course, was a moral dilemma.
That's
I had
a
to
fate
decide
worse than hell.
Exactly how awful do I want to be as a person, And I decided that I needed to go home anyway.
Yeah.
So I went back to Montana at that point. But basically, then what I found out, well, I went back to New York when I was in my late 20s. That's when I started doing the bar bouncing thing, right? But I wasn't making that much money. I was working for $40 a night, coming out of there bloody, with ripped shirts ripped off my back. I couldn't even pay for the shirts,
Right.
that I was making. So I figured, okay, what I'll do is I'll take the civil service exam again. Now, I don't want to sound insensitive, but at that point in New York, there was a protocol whereby you take the civil service exam, and if you are a minority, if you are non-white, you get 30 extra points.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing insensitive. This is just a fact. I mean, it's a fact of our law.
It's just a fact. They've been doing it for a long time. It's called affirmative action, of course. And when that happens, and I'm applying to be, say, a police officer, right? And all of these other guys, these non-white guys, are looking also to be police officers. You learn that there's a line of 3,000 guys in front of you. So then you give up your idea of being a police officer, and you give up your idea of ever succeeding, getting a job on the basis of a civil service exam. Now, they do have, white police officers in New York, but almost all those guys are connected. They've got some kind of uncle or acquaintance or somebody who's on the police force that will put in a good word for them. I didn't
Nepotism
have
at its
like
finest.
And it is
merit made no difference whatsoever. This is not a meritocracy we live in.
Yeah.
You can take any number of these tests and outscore everybody else and get nothing and nowhere.
And it's especially true of civil service. It's true in a lot of fields in the economy, but especially in civil service, that has been a pronounced issue for a long time. So presumably during all this time, though, you're not just saying, as many people do when they leave college, whether they graduate or not, they say, okay, well, that's it. I'm never reading a book again. I'm done with all that book learning. Something tells me that's not your mindset, even as you're doing these physical jobs.
It certainly wasn't. I would like go to library sales and found a little bookstore, that had some academic books in it, and just get whatever I could. And I always had to, I had to basically read whatever I found. I couldn't afford to order a book, even back then, books were expensive.
Yeah.
So I couldn't go to a bookstore and pay full price for a book. So I was constantly buying used books, which were, when they were textbooks, they were used and therefore outmoded. The field advances, the book stays the same.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it's got some of the stuff that I need in it. Then I can absorb that. So that's what I did. Yeah, just basically worked on my, on my own ideas, trying to apply what I read in these books.
Was there any field that attracted you in particular? I mentioned that I don't have anything past high school math, and even that I was pretty sketchy on. Math, physics, philosophy, theology.
Well, now when I was 14, I was working on a ranch in Wilsall, Montana, which is just across the bridges from Bozeman. I don't know if you're familiar with Bozeman, but
I am.
Anyway, I was working as a punching cows, stacking hay, irrigating on this ranch, and I took 2 books with me, and one of them was a book by Albert Einstein on the theory of relativity, and the other one was a book by Bertrand Russell.
As long as it wasn't Don Quixote.
And I would read these books. I was living in a covered wagon. They call it a sheep wagon these days. But literally, I'm not kidding. I mean, that's what it was. A kerosene lamp in a sheep wagon out in the middle of a field.
Reading Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein.
Reading Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein. And it occurred to me, these 2 things really need to be put together. And then, once I decided that, I started putting them together. And then I found out about Kurt Gödel and the undecidability theorem. And yes, absolutely. Okay, you see, because reality isn't just geometric, which is what Einstein thought it was, nor is it just linguistic. It's a blend of the two, right? Russell saw it as being linguistic. Einstein saw it as being geometric. Okay, so I decided that reality must be logico-geometric, putting the two of them together. And of course, then I realized, well, I've got to put together a theory, construct a theory in which reality is actually logico-geometric. And so that's where the CTMU came from.
And the CTMU is the Cognitive-Theoretic Model of the universe.
Cognitive-Theoretic Model of the universe.
This is your theory of everything.
My theory of everything, and it's all in the name. If you take a good close look at that, you've got cognitive theory, and of course, you know, a theory is a kind of language, theoretic language, okay? And then you've got cognitive-theoretic model, you've got a model, and then you've got universe. You've got a language, you've got a universe, and then the model is the mapping between them. CTMU says those are all the same thing. All of those terms, all of those properties are distributed everywhere over reality.
He'll get into
Reality
the meat
can
of this
have only
stuff as
one
we go
structure
here.
once you realize that and you implement it in theoretical form.
So then the question I asked you is kind of a stupid question, because I said, which field was it that attracted you? And your answer is yes.
Well, I would have to say it would have to be logic and language, and then physics and mathematics. Okay, so those are the fields, and that's what I thought I was conveying, but
yes,
apparently I need to spell it out.
You do, no, you do, because but this is so important that you're not just talking about this siloed aspect of thought, or this, you know, philosophy over here, language over here, math over here, physics over here, but you're presenting something that is universal.
Correct, correct, absolute and universal. To get the absolute invariance, the absolute truths of reality, you know, things that are true everywhere you go, no matter, you know, at what time you exist or in what place you exist, it's the same.
So for those of us who have an IQ that's a little bit lower than yours, I'll admit it, with no false modesty and no undue confidence.
Well, IQ is not the last word on intelligence by any means. IQ is where you focus. You can focus, marshal all your intellectual energy and focus it very tightly on one item that you've been presented with. Okay, there's tests contain items, and you're focusing on each one of those items. You're not seeing anything else. Okay, and that's what IQ is. But in addition to that depth and that focus, there is also aperture. Think of the mind as a kind of camera. Okay, what a lot of high IQ people have a lot of difficulty doing is widening their mental aperture. You've got to be flexible. You've got to be able to widen and narrow that aperture at will as you're doing the depth perception too. So you've got the focus, depth of focus, the magnification, as it were, plus the aperture. And most people, you know, most high IQ people, they have the magnification, but they don't have the aperture.
So then from the perspective, simultaneously, I suppose, both of depth and breadth here, if we're talking about a theory of everything, the first question we have to establish, does God exist?
Yes.
Simple as that.
Well, it's the identity has the reality has an identity. Okay, the identity is that as which something exists. Okay, matter of fact, when you say the word reality, you're naming an identity. It is, you're identifying something. This.
I'm smiling because your answer on this is so beautiful. It just reminds me of Moses at the burning bush, and Moses at the burning bush says, "Who shall I tell the people that you are?" Talking to God, and God says, "Tell them I am that I am."
That's right.
I am identity itself. I'm being
that's
himself.
That's exactly right. That's what the CTMU says. It just comes up with the mathematical structure that you need to build a reality out of that. You see? So you come up with that identity, and then you search it for its properties. You see, once you've built the preliminary framework, then you start deducing the properties of this identity, and you find out that those properties match those of God as described in most of the world's major religions. Right?
Just the theistic religion, so I'm thinking Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, or are you talking also of, say,
Buddhism, Taoism, Hinduism, Vedism? Of course, Hinduism and Vedism, they have a God. Taoism, you know, their central principle is the way, or the Tao. Okay, and they don't see Tao as God.
Yep.
And then in Buddhism, of course, you got, you know, they are trying basically to achieve sunyata, or emptiness. right? Which is most Buddhists,
you,
a lot of Buddhists don't even understand what that's supposed to mean. But once again, there's no God there. You can kind of read God implicitly. Some Buddhists, I've talked to Buddhists who actually think that there is a God in Buddhism of a sort. But it's, you know, that concept of pure consciousness is what it is. Okay? And if you ask them, well, whose consciousness are you talking about? They will point at themselves and say, my consciousness. In a way, they're, you know, they kind of attribute the existence of everything to themselves. Okay?
I know I've known a lot of people in Hollywood and Washington, D.C. who do the same thing, actually.
Well, that's right. That's why Buddhism is very fashionable among some of those people.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
So yes. But anyway, when you look at what they've all got, you come down to the same thing. All right? Everybody has the Tao, or the way, you know, that's the way reality works, right? And everybody, you know, has sunyata, which is pure syntax, right? Pure cognition with no instantiation, no content, right? And then you've got what the Abrahamic religions call God. It's all the same thing, okay? But what are its properties? Okay, are its properties such that you can deny the existence of God, or are its properties such that God definitely has to exist? And the answer is God exists.
T-Rex, what's up, buddy?
God
The properties of the central substance and central principle of reality, those properties are attributed to God, including, of course, you know, things like you have the three O's: omniscience, omnipotence, and omnipresence, but then you've also got consciousness. God has to be sentient.
Hey, Farrell.
So we're not just
Hey, Farrell,
defining God out of existence. Sometimes you'll hear people say God exists, but they'll give God such a weak and shallow definition that the God that they're describing has no relation to the God that we conceive of. You're saying, no, this God is God. God himself is conscious and therefore personal?
Yes. You can establish a personal relationship with God. We're images of God. You know what an image is? It's basically the product of a mapping. God maps himself into each human being, right? That's a very personal thing that God is doing for us, right? And I don't understand how anybody can say that it's any different. We reflect the structure of the universe. Each one of us, we're carried by it. Everything we do, we exist in a medium.
Hey,
What
Maddie.
is that medium?
Hey, Judge, what's
Right?
up?
Where
How
did
you
it come
doing?
from? What holds it together? What is the unifying coherence, the source of coherence of that medium?
Now, is your claim a pantheistic claim that God is the universe, or the universe is God, and that's that? Or no? Or is God outside of the universe and created?
God is greater than, well, what is the universe?
Damned if I know.
You ever hear of the simulation hypothesis?
Yes.
Okay, well, the simulation hypothesis is basically the idea that the reality we see around us, physical reality, is simulated on some sort of an automaton or a computer.
Yeah, some aliens somewhere have just they've fooled us.
Right, exactly. Oh, eat a piece of licorice.
Before one launches into the simulation, one needs a little sustenance, you know.
Okay, so anyway, the idea is that you've got some kind of an automaton running. You've got a simulation running on it. And God, it's more panentheistic. You know what panentheism is?
I do. I think I do. But that means that we are in God. Let me know how I've gone wrong. We are in God, and God is in us. And it is not merely that God and the creation are one and the same, but they are quite related. So that's something approaching panentheism?
A little bit, yes.
Okay.
There's the idea is that you've got the physical universe that you see around you, but God is not confined to the physical universe.
Okay.
See, there's an ordinary pantheist assumes that God is somehow confined to the universe, that there is just what we see around us, and God is in every piece of it. God is distributed over it.
Yeah.
Right? But it's a little bit more complex than that, because this part of the universe that we see around us cannot exist just by itself.
Yeah.
Okay? There are certain things that it entails. And when you go into those entailments, that's how you get to God. That's how you get to the identity of reality. Okay? And now to get back to the reality of self-simulation, or at least that's what I call it, self-simulation. But to get back to the simulation hypothesis, that we're living in the display of that simulation. In addition to the display, there is also a processing aspect, okay? And God, it captures both of those things. He captures both the display and the processor.
What do you mean? I hate to put it in the...
Well, I mean, okay, here's the display. You realize the display contains states.
Yep.
Okay, you see things, the objects contain states. States are static.
Yep.
That's why they're called states.
Yeah.
Okay, static. How do they change? Well, they have to be processed. Something has to
Okay,
process.
yeah.
And in the calculus, for example, those are tiny little infinitesimal intervals. Okay, but they are not actually contained in the states themselves. They have a neighborhood, a little tangent space or what have you, where you can sort of draw little vectors that suggest that some kind of processing is going on. But the idea of being a state and being a process, those are two different things.
Yeah.
In the ordinary way of looking at it, okay? It turns out that you can't properly describe reality and causation at all unless you put those things together somehow. And that's what it takes God to do. Okay, God provides the processing functionality for your state. You have an internal state, an external state. You're a material human being, right? Like, to explain how that is changing through time, and maintaining its coherence through time, even as it changes. That's what you need God for.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that entirely. And so I might not be sophisticated enough to parse all of the quibbles that there might be, but broadly speaking, as a Christian, so much of what you're saying resonates as obviously true for me. The idea that, well, I'm a member of the body of Christ. The idea that God creates the world in this great act of love, this great act of charity.
Self-love.
And yeah, well, that,
self-love. Don't forget, you're an image of God.
Right.
So in loving himself, God loves you.
And God, and
you're supposed to love God back.
Right, and this ties into something like the Trinity, right? The idea that God is three persons in one divine unity. So all of this is making a lot of sense to me. So now, how do I make sense of consciousness?
Well, ordinarily, you know what quantum mechanics, you know what quantization is?
I know the word.
Yeah. Well, you decide what the ultimate irreducible objects are. Those are the quanta in terms of which you reason. It turns out that in order to quantize that theory that I was talking about, that theory of identity, where you've got the display and you've got the processor, and it's handling both. It turns out that in order to handle both of those things, you need a certain kind of quantum. That quantum is called an identity operator. God is the identity. So obviously these little quanta, they have to be, they're doing things, they're processing, so we can call them operators, right? They are identity operators. Okay, the identity operator has, basically it takes input from the outside world, recognizes it or accepts it using syntax, processes it, and then returns it to the world as external state. Okay, so things come in, then they're processed, right? There's throughput, which is, you could call that the subjective or internal state of the identity operator, and then it's returned to the external universe.
But are you attributing now?
So what I'm saying is that's consciousness. And I'm saying that consciousness exists in every part of the universe because those are the quanta.
That's what I'm asking. Are you telling me that this table is conscious?
In that sense, yes, generically conscious. But it's relying on our consciousness to do it. There's levels of quanta, okay? These are tertiary quanta. They're all put together using physical localistic forces, right? But those are underdeterminative. They don't fully determine what happens. Why? The Heisenberg uncertainty principle, for example, it tells you that, the quantum rules, they're probabilistic.
Right.
They don't actually determine events, okay? So what determines events? We do. We don't know how we do it, but we do it. When everybody's will is put together, we're all creating the best possible universe we can for ourselves. And God is what harmonizes all of our different perspectives and makes things happen for all of us at the same time. And if we were doing things correctly, this would be the best of all possible worlds. Sadly, however, we oftentimes make mistakes. And that's what we have to get out of doing, but we can't get out of doing it until we understand what reality is, what we are, and what the relationship between those two things is.
Now, you've mentioned two things that raise a new question for me, which is you mentioned this idea of simulation, just the simulation or self-simulation, and you've mentioned us doing things. So then it would seem to me we have to tackle the question, do we really do much of anything at all, in the sense, do we have free will?
Yes, we do. Okay.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. I always thought we did.
Well, yes, we have to have free will. Oh, I was discussing with you earlier the idea of a fixed array. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Now, modern physics know basically what you've got is you've got a bunch of quantum fields in superposition, and then those fields consist of little fluctuations, little quantum fluctuations, right? Where is the fixed array? We were talking about a manifold, right, with a bunch of zero-dimensional points. Okay. Those two things are not compatible. Okay. Quantum field theory and that fixed array manifold where you can parameterize all of the causal functions using the manifold, that doesn't work. Okay, those two things don't fit together.
Now, you explained to me when we were speaking about this earlier. You put this
real quick. I just want to say, in terms of what he was talking about as consciousness expression and being God mapping himself into everybody else, right? When I was thinking on my own about this, but way prior to ever hearing about this guy, this is new stuff. But I often thought about the 3D universe, right? So if you guys remember, I did a long time ago to stream about the 3D third dimension universe, went into the dimensions and what they mean and so on, right? Well, that God, it isn't isn't part of the physical realm in a sense, right? And so we're here to kind of represent the sensory for God himself in this realm, right? And so, being mapped in like that. So this is where our theories kind of cross, right? I mean, obviously this guy's put a lot of work into this, but I say in my perception of it, right, and how I was thinking about it and where my mind was going with it, it's interesting because it would kind of go in the same place, as in, we're here to observe, to database, to take in, to experience, to feel, right? In the third dimension we can feel, but God being omnipotent would be beyond the realm of the third dimension. So consciousness itself, us as physical manifestations, are able to take on that role and be part of that. So to what ends, we'll find out. But I just wanted to kind of point out that, as far as what my takes have been, or like where my thoughts were leading me, this is where we kind of kind of synced up a little bit here.
This into even more layman's terms, and it has already flown out of my head. Can you put that into more basic terms, what you've just said?
But what was it you need to understand about this? What are you actually?
Why are these two concepts you're describing? Why are they not reconcilable? What is the problem with these?
Oh, I explained that to you already. That's one. Okay, all right. It consists of zero-dimensional points,
yes,
limit points or cuts. I told you what a Dedekind cut was, right?
Yep.
These limit points have zero extent. They're exact locations, and that's a cut. You're actually, you've got something on one side of the point, and then you've got something on the other side of the point, and any line that you draw through the point itself is going to be cut by the point.
Yep.
Okay, so we call that a cut. Okay, and the cut is zero-dimensional, which means that it has no extent at all. It's an exact location. It's precise.
Yep.
No extent. It's not smeared out. Okay.
Yes.
If you take all of those points and you add them together, you get zero.
Right.
Because no matter how many times you add zero to itself, you just get zero. And because the manifold consists of those points, that's what you have to do to find out the extent of the manifold.
Okay.
So what this is telling you is that the manifold itself has zero extent. There's nothing there. So the real manifold of classical physics is a paradoxical construct. Okay?
Okay.
So that's why those two things, that's why that doesn't work with quantum field theory and the idea that things are quantum fluctuations and fields. That's why, as a matter of fact, that particular concept of the real manifold, that doesn't work for anything at all. It's a conceptual convenience. We can reason about reality in terms of it, and we can actually get to some very interesting conclusions.
Okay.
Using it.
You're right.
But it doesn't work in the long run. Okay? And because it doesn't work, most causal functions, of course, are parameterized in terms of this manifold.
Okay.
Okay? In other words, you take, you've got X, Y, and Z axes, and the forces that exist, the forces that cause things to happen, right? Those forces are all directed along one of those axes. That's what a force is, right? Okay. When you take away the points, those zero-dimensional points, now all of that disappears. The basis of causation has just fled the coop on you, right?
Okay.
Because you no longer have little points, the tails of the little vectors that point there. You can no longer parameterize your causal functions using those points and vectors. So what do you do to get causal functions? Well, it turns out you have to use something called advanced causation. And you combine that with advanced causation is called retrocausation. You combine that with ordinary retarded causation, and you get something else entirely. It's called metacausation in the CTMU.
So
it's referred to using two operations, one of which is called conspansion and the other which is called suboperation, called telic recursion.
because when we're talking about free will, often the conversation, especially these days, becomes this sort of shallow discussion of, well, this caused this, and I'm going to describe a totally deterministic system, and so as a result of this causing this, causing this, causing this, you don't have free will. And you're saying cause is actually more complicated than just cause.
That's correct. In other words, talking about free will in those terms is osios. Means nothing.
Yeah.
You can't get anywhere with it. Okay. Reality is actually generative. Okay. It's not a fixed manifold. Everything is being created all the time. Not just our states. Our states are being recreated, right? You know, I can cross my legs. I can uncross my leg. That's the changing state.
Yeah.
But the medium around us is changing. When I look at you, I'm seeing Michael Knowles. Okay. I'm seeing you sitting there. But that means that I'm seeing your boundary. I'm seeing what distinguishes you from the external environment, right? There's a medium around you. So I have to be regenerating that at the same time as I'm regenerating your state in my head, okay? When I say regenerating, there's a reason I'm doing that. I could also say I'm recognizing Michael Knowles, I'm recognizing your state right now, but I'm also recognizing the state of the medium around you, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to distinguish you from the medium and you wouldn't exist at all.
Right. Right. Well, it's sort of like a little baby, right? Has trouble recognizing the limits of things and recognizing what some individual object might be from, you know, the glass on the table. They have trouble distinguishing those things.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Okay. The baby has to learn to distinguish those boundaries, and it has to receive the right visual cues at the right age so that it can actually learn how to do that.
Yeah. So now we're at metacausation. So what does metacausation have?
Causation works from past to future, okay? Metacausation works from past to future and from future to past in a closed loop. It's called a conspansive cycle.
Okay.
Okay? So that's basically what we have to do to quantization in order to make causality work. And of course, when I say causality, I mean metacausation, okay?
So how does...
Because ordinary past to future causality, parameterized by a fixed array, that doesn't work.
So I get past to future. This seems pretty simple. I pick up the glass of water, I put it over here, and now I remember 2 seconds ago that water was over here, and then I caused it to go over there.
Right.
So how do you cause something to go from the future to the past?
It can't go anywhere unless there's some place for it to go.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying, okay?
Yeah.
This is, in the universe, everything changes with time. You're actually, you know, in the theory of relativity, for example, all the points are events.
Yep.
Okay, and that means that there's a time parameter involved. Okay, so when you take that glass and you move it from there to there, okay, you think that there's a point right there where you're going to move that glass. That's false.
Because everything's
okay.
moving.
The point to which you are going to move that glass is actually in the future.
In the future, yeah.
When you pick up that glass, it's still in. You understand?
You guys
what I'm
get
saying?
that?
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. And then getting back to God, I guess we're always trying to get back to God. God is outside of time and space.
Well, God distributes over time.
God is
Reading
time
Harvey.
and space. He's not outside of it.
Time and space is static. It's a display.
Yeah.
Imagine that you're a little homunculus inside a computer display, like the Matrix, for example, okay? God not only distributes
Good night,
over
Harvey.
that, but there's a
Sleep
whole
well.
other domain where God exists. And that's the processing domain. That's the non-terminal domain in the CTMU. We're in the terminal domain, right? And most physicists, when they try to reason about the terminal domain, They reason under physical confinement. Okay, well, I can only look at physics, and I have to use what I know about physics, what I can observe about physics, to explain everything else that I explain. So they have that kind of explanatory closure going right there.
So speaking of this non-terminal domain, in a really basic question, I'm not going to ask you if I'm going to go to heaven or hell, but will I go to either heaven or hell?
You will persist after you die. Okay? Where you go depends on who Michael Knowles really is. And you would know that better than anybody.
Yeah, I hope I know that better than. But you're telling me I'm going somewhere.
Yes.
You're confident of that. I don't just evaporate. I don't just turn into oblivion.
Well, you can. If you displease God, that's exactly what's going to happen to you. God is going to cut you off, and he's going to say, I can't see him anymore. He's going to turn away from you, and then you won't be able to reunite. Salvation will be impossible for you, because salvation means that God has got to pull you back into himself.
Right.
Okay, but God doesn't want to see you anymore. He doesn't even know you exist. He knows your physical body is there, but he's not interested anymore, because you hate him, you deny his existence, you offend him, so he's not going to look at you, right? So now what happens? Well, okay, you're dead. You still want to live. There's something in you that still desperately wants to live, so it's still going to be there. What happens now? Well, you try to create your own world for yourself, but if you're a bad person or you're an evil person, what kind of world is that going to be? It's going to be an evil world, and that's what we call hell.
This is what John Milton says in The Mouth of Satan. He says, the mind is its own place, and it can make a hell of heaven or heaven a hell.
Now you got it.
It reminds me of Dante also, this idea of God turning away. The very deepest part of hell is Satan frozen in a lake of ice of his own making because of the flapping of his own wings, because he's apart from the warmth of God.
Precisely.
Okay.
That's the way it has to work.
So we've gotten through death, judgment, heaven and hell, free will, and God.
Not completely. There's a lot more to be said.
Well, and we still have some time. I mean, fortunately, on my usual show, there is about 30 seconds to come to any conclusion about anything. And thankfully, I am not bringing Chris Langan to Nashville to talk for 10 minutes. This is going to be a much longer discussion. So for this discussion, would you like a cigar?
Sure.
Good.
I haven't smoked a cigar in a long time.
Oh, excellent. You know, the body is a temple. The temple needs incense.
I did. Back in the day, I used to enjoy it.
I'm going to remember that one. Don't smoke. Body's a temple. I need
Good
incense.
cigar.
I'm glad you liked it. This is one of my favorite cigars that's come out. You know, if you were on the Joe Rogan show, they would offer you something a little stronger, but this we're going to keep it to tobacco on this show.
I'd like to see him.
I think I've seen a couple of, I've seen the Rogan show a couple of times. He was talking about some kind of drugs. At that point in his career, I think that's all he was talking about.
Yeah. Did you ever get into drugs? I'm not saying, you know, just because you were around bars in New York, but even the drugs that everyone says expand your mind and anything like that.
Well, you couldn't really grow up in the era when I grew up around the kind of people I was surrounded with without trying, you know, some drugs. I don't have a substance abusive tendency in my body. Yeah. I just don't have any bad habits except for this.
Licorice and candy.
Oh man, I love that stuff. It's addictive. I'm addicted to it.
It is.
But I have to hide it from myself. I don't have any in the house right now.
But you never got, because I would always have people tell me, especially in college, they'd say, Michael, you have to drop acid. You have to smoke this. You have to take mushrooms.
No, this is
it's going to expand your mind. And I thought, you know, my brain, such as it is pretty much all I got. I'm not exactly the captain of the football team. And if some drug messes up my brain, I'm sunk.
That's correct. But of course, what they say is that some of these medications can actually be good for you in terms of you may have certain things, certain mental routines that are destructive and that aren't good for you that can be interdicted by psychedelics, for example.
What's your take on it?
My take is that could very well be true. You know, the psychedelics could open up a gap between your temporal consciousness and your non-terminal consciousness, right? Your mind is it's an extended stratified thing. We're just using our terminal consciousness right now, but there are other aspects to your consciousness. You can actually get, you know, certain kinds of insights and communications if you just open up a gap. You understand? And let them come in and fill the gap, and then, you know, you can see them as they would ordinarily.
So the things that people see when they're on psychedelics, I usually write them off and I tell people,
Well, he
you
did
know,
say the
you're
one.
just hallucinating. But you're saying maybe that's not all it is. They might be seeing something real.
Well, once again, what is reality? Is reality just stuff out there? No, reality has a mental aspect.
Yep.
Right? And once you admit that basically everything has a mental aspect, then of course what's going on in your mind is real. It takes on a kind of reality. It's not the same as physical reality. It is nevertheless real.
Are angels and demons real?
Yes. Yes.
I think so too. Is there a fear that if you take some of these drugs, you might be letting in the wrong guys?
That's a problem, isn't it? And that's a problem that I think a lot of people have encountered. You have to be a certain kind of person to be able to handle these drugs and not be sucked under by them, okay? Because once your mind is, you know, is messed with in that way, something else, you know, it's weakened, you know, you're not exactly in control anymore. Something else can come in and grab it.
I agree.
And if you open up that gap that I was talking about, what can come into that gap might not be good for you.
God is real, angels are real, demons are real. Is the devil real?
Oh, yes. Yes. Well, it has to be. You know, we were talking about Michael Knowles being surrounded by the medium and, you know, you've got a boundary.
Yeah.
Well, God has a boundary too. He's got a very tight boundary. He is perfect. He can't take anything resembling imperfection, right? He can't take it into himself because that would be a contradiction. Okay, so God needs an antithesis in order to be properly defined. What is that antithesis? Anti-God or Satan. So it definitely exists. Now, Satan isn't coherent because, you know, he basically hates existence. Nevertheless, he gains coherence through human beings, through secondary tellers, as they're called in the CTMU.
Background.
In other words, Satan can nucleate power structures, for example, you know, things like corporations and governments, where you've got people in there that can be acquired as resources, and there's a kind of skeleton, you know, a corporate organization, a governmental, you know, organization that's holding them together, holding them in place, that can be exploited by Satan.
So you're not describing Manichaeism. You're not saying there's God and then the opposite of God and there's some maybe equivalence between the two. You're saying that God, obviously there is an antithesis. Christ has an antichrist, but that it's incoherent. And are you saying that he sort of that the devil sort of lacks substance, or that's why he needs the humans?
I'm saying the devil lacks coherence. Coherence is what brings everything into superposition, right, with itself. In other words, it allows something to, this is going to sound a little bit paradoxical, allows something to communicate non-locally with itself, right? All of its possible states are in superposition. They exist all at once, okay? And this is pretty much inescapable.
I'm reminded of a writer, René Girard, who had this idea that the devil, being who he is a kind of contradiction of being. And it seems to me what Girard says is something similar to what you're saying, which is that he requires us to kind of do his dirty work.
That is correct. Yeah. We give existence to the devil, to Satan. Now, you have to make a distinction, however, between Satan and Lucifer, for example. Now, Lucifer is an angel. Okay, that's what he's supposed to be, a fallen angel.
Right.
You know, but nevertheless, an angel, right? The angel of light. Okay, the morning star, whatever you want to call him, okay? That is not Satan. Those are two different things.
What's the difference?
This would no doubt be classified as a heresy, for example, in the church.
I did not bring the Inquisition with me yet. They're not behind the curtains here. So what is your idea then? Because traditionally it's understood that Satan and Lucifer are the same person. You're saying they're different.
Yes.
How are they different?
Well, Lucifer walks the fence. Basically, he's the angel of light. What does light do? Basically, light is what brings reality to us. Okay, he's walking the fence between good and evil. We're all in the same boat. We all walk the fence between good and evil. Okay, how can we do that? Okay, well, through Lucifer. Yeah.
And the grace of God. Right?
Through Lucifer. Basically, Lucifer has been exiled here because God won't tolerate the imperfections of this place, okay? He has Lucifer handle that for him. And that's why Lucifer is what he is. That's how he fell down here to earth, okay? He's performing a function here. That function is light. I mean, I don't know, do you follow what
I do. I'm still trying to parse the difference a little. If Christ says, I saw Satan fall like lightning from heaven, is he describing Satan here, or he's describing Lucifer? Or both?
If Christ were here and I could hear his exact words, I could perfectly interpret them.
Right, okay. Yeah.
But it's very hard to do that, 2,000 years after the fact, right? With all the different translations and interpretations that the Bible has undergone, okay?
And
so what I like to do is I like to approach it from first principles and look at it logically, right? Rationally. And what does logic tell us, if anything, okay? Well, logic tells us that basically God needs a negation, but that negation is too incoherent to function in this world except through human beings.
Right. This is really interesting. It gets into what is good and evil here.
Lucifer is a concept that is better suited than Satan to that purpose.
I love this point that he's incoherent, that the old devil is incoherent. That I read some poem, I think it's a modern poem, that says, sin is a big problem because it's evil. But it's also a big problem because it's such a waste of time. It's so incoherent. When you think of when you take the suffering out of it and you just think of people committing any particular sin, it just doesn't make any sense, does it?
Well, the sense that it makes to them is they're enjoying it. They're hedonistically deriving pleasure from the sin. And of course, we all, have the same pleasure mechanisms. Yep. So we're all tempted to commit sin, but we've got to keep a lid on it. There have to be limits. Okay, and what I'm worried about is that now Satan controls the world, and there are certain people involved in running things who don't have those limits. Well, they're so rich, they're so powerful that they don't need those limits anymore. So they've more or less thrown them off.
Now, there's nothing new to the idea that Satan or Lucifer, or let's call him just the old devil himself, is the prince of this world, and that the rich and the powerful they do his bidding, and they're bad people, and they follow their lowest appetites and their pleasures, and they can be sadistic. And so that's been going on for a long time. Is there something particular about the moment we're living in that says it's actually gotten much worse?
Yes, that is, we've had so many technological advancements that now the technology of surveillance and coercion are such, and these people are so rich, they're like black holes gravitating all the money to themselves, that they're unstoppable, okay? And because they're unstoppable, because they actually run everything, okay, we are endangered by them now.
It sounds to me like you're saying we don't live in Schoolhouse Rock, I'm a bill up on Capitol Hill. We're not living in the republic that a lot of us say that we're living in.
That's correct. We're ruled, basically, the world is globalistic now. It's run by globalists. That's their goal. I mean, that's what global means. We're going global. Yeah.
It's oligarchic.
Huh?
And it would therefore be oligarchic.
That's absolutely correct. Oligarchic, because very few of them actually exist.
And this is beyond, a U.S. senator. This is beyond the structures.
Those are puppets. Yeah. It's fairly common knowledge now, I suppose, that I regard most politicians as being one step removed from prostitutes.
Yeah. That's been true for
and that's not
two oldest
universal.
professions.
There are a few exceptions, but let me tell you, they're on the run.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a very serious situation, right? And if you take a look at these globalists, the ones that have thrown off all the limits, and they're fantastically rich and powerful now, and you take a look at what they actually have upstairs, I'm afraid it's not very impressive.
Right.
Okay. I mean, if you really look at their intellectual production, Soros might be the best of them.
Yeah.
He's at least got a theory of economics. It's flawed. But, he at least has that. The rest of them are just a bunch of Sybarites.
What about, I guess, even outside of banking or finance per se, what about someone like Bill Gates? That guy's everywhere. He seems to be, I don't know, why is he an expert on healthcare? I don't know, but my television tells me that he is. Why is he So someone like that, but he's a smart guy. He's got to be, right?
Oh, he's not stupid. Bill Gates is, he's got a respectable intellect, but there's something misfiring there. Okay. Bill is very concerned with overpopulation, and we do have an overpopulation problem.
So then this brings me to, I asked friends of mine, I said, speaking to Chris Langan, send in your questions. And most of the questions were about metaphysics and God and the CTMU and all of your thoughts on all those things. But one friend of mine, he said, I want you to ask him about Bitcoin. I want you to ask him about money, and if there's any way to break the government or super government control of money. What do you think of? If I want to start my own currency, I guess I could. I'd call it Michael Coin. Is this one way to push back against an increasingly technocratic global form of government?
Yes, there is, but it has to start at the local level. You're not going to print your own world currency to compete head to head with these. You've got to go, basically attend a few city council meetings. You've got to go in there, say your piece, say we've got a problem, basically the world is run by globalism. This is America. We should have our right of self-determination here, but that's being taken away from us. See who, agrees with you about it. Somebody will probably come up to you after your speech and say, I agree with you 100%. Then you find out who those people are, you get together and you start putting pressure on your local politicians.
Are you saying the situation is so bad politically that actually, people will call you a radical and an extremist and a terrorist for something like this? But are you saying basically, Jefferson, we need to go fight another revolution or something? Or is there?
I would just as soon see this whole thing resolved non-violently. Of course, I want peace on earth. I want everybody to feel as though we're in fellowship with each other, the brotherhood of man. You know what I'm talking about. That is the right way to do it.
When you or I or Donald Trump, for that matter, use the word globalism, what the liberal establishment says is, that's either they'll say globalism is good and we should have more of it, or they'll say that's a crazy conspiracy theory. There's no such thing as globalism.
What?
I could point to a lot of international organizations that increasingly try to take power away from national government.
Well, what are intelligence agencies? What are trade secrets? What's intellectual property? They're all conspiracies.
Right.
Okay. People trying to get ahead by lying by omission or relying directly to other people. The competition, right? That's what it is. You can't get away from conspiracy. It's how the world works. As a matter of fact, it's game theoretically rational. So
you're saying not conspiracy theory. You're saying just flat out conspiracy.
That's what makes the world go around, I'm afraid.
It's again something I've said a lot of too.
The elite themselves realize this. They know that that's
there's
how
conspiracies
the world
and
works.
conspiracy.
They just want to distract
That's
you.
why I separate.
Well, that's such a great way to put it, where you say a trade secret, or just a group of people come together. They say, I've got this good idea for a company, and we're going to come together and do that, and we're not going to let the competition know about it. We're going to start this, and we're going to
get rid of that
it'll be
word
successful,
theory.
and we'll make some money. And
that
is a
research
form
or
WF and their
cigarette?
Young Global Leader program, young global leaders. I mean, everybody's a young global leader, right? I mean, Trudeau, Macron, Merkel, Putin. And for the Putin deals, that very much surprised me. But Klaus Schwab is on record. He's on video, in fact, claiming that Vlad Putin is one of his young global leaders.
Wow.
Trained in globalism.
It's funny you mentioned that the young wing of the World Economic Forum.
When
I was a freshman in college, you get all of these opportunities.
The rest of
for
them are on that
internships and fellowships, and you get a grant. You try to get a grant, so you apply to these things. I don't know anything about any of these groups, and so I said, I'm a politically minded young man, very conservative, so it made me very different than my classmates.
Right.
And one of the opportunities that came across was the World Economic Forum Global Change Makers.
You were invited to be a part of this?
No, I applied. You
actually applied?
I applied, and they said,
shame on you.
Well, I didn't know what it was. So I said, what's the experience? I said, well, I'm very involved in this conservative group and this right-wing group and this.
Good way to get ahead. I got to give you that.
Well, but I'll tell you, I thought I had a good resume. It wasn't like my classmates, which was they had all their liberal groups. So I said, I'm a conservative. But you probably want some conservatives here, right? And so I apply, and you're going to be shocked to hear this, Chris. I didn't hear back. They didn't take.
Yeah, I'm absolutely flabbergasted.
And
not even a rejection.
Liberal classmates, who I felt had a weaker application, but they were all part of the liberal groups.
Yes.
They did get it.
Well,
I guess it makes sense now that I know what the World
what is
Economic Forum is.
socialism? I mean, what is communism, right? These things were actually funded. They're more or less invented by the central bank. You know, who funded,
Yep.
you know, originally was paying Marx and Engels, and before that, Moses Hess and other people to come up with, you know, it's a strategy for world domination. It has been for the last 200 years. What has changed?
So when someone like Trump comes along and he says,
Marxism
I'm
is
not
a
going to
grift.
fight this political battle along exactly left-right lines or Republican-Democrat, but I'm saying I'm going to stand for the American nation and nationalism generally against globalism. But he managed to get through. He did get elected.
Yes, he did.
Were you a Trump supporter? You don't need to say if you don't want
As
to.
a matter of fact, back when people were saying Trump can't read, look at the way he hesitates. You know, he can't. He's got trouble with the teleprompter. The guy can't read. I actually stood up and I said no. I said I've met Donald Trump and I think his IQ is probably equal to that of the average Harvard professor.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I actually stood up for. Of course, I never got anything out of it, but you know, I thought I was doing. You know,
You just said it 'cause it
telling
said it was true.
people that, you know, basically he is competent. He's a good businessman. You know, and therefore could be good for the country. And I wanted people to understand that.
So how did this guy, and I've asked this to my friends, and I said, how did this guy, who I think was basically on the level and really did at least try to pose a stopping block to the globalism program, how did he ever get elected? How'd they let him through?
Well, he was a little bit of a wild
Later,
card.
Bulldog
And Trump
Gator.
is not as easily controlled as some of them are.
Have a good one.
See,
He
man,
stood up
take
there
care.
and he spoke his mind. He's got good instincts in that respect because what he said
Mhm.
resonates with what is in the minds of a lot of American citizens. We want to have our own country. We want America to have first. We don't want our borders to be open. We don't want millions of third world migrants coming here every year and displacing us from our own territory. I mean, and Trump actually, he did a good job of enunciating that. That's how he got elected. Okay. And the first time around, you know, they weren't prepared.
Yeah.
You know, so they couldn't do anything about it the second time around. Yeah.
Are you suggesting, Chris, that there were some questions about the 2020 presidential election?
Anyone who doesn't understand that
I like
that
his laugh.
election was, shall we say, not quite up to snuff, is some kind of moron.
That's true.
Because I was told by all the fact checkers and all those social media censors that if I raised any question, I said, you know, it seems like they kind of violated the law in Pennsylvania, and it seems like actually they kind of extended the voting periods. And, they said that's crazy. You're a conspiracy theorist. How dare you?
Well, that's exactly what they do. You see, you've violated groupthink, so you're out. Your opinion means nothing.
How would you describe your politics?
You had the wrong thought.
Populist, conservative?
I was always pretty much of an independent. When I was a kid, I was basically a Democrat, working, you know, I mean, my family was Democratic, you know, it was, I think my stepfather was you ever hear of the Wobblies?
Yeah.
He was an organizer for the Wobblies out of Chicago. Okay. And so always I was raised around this liberal attitude. So yeah, we were Democrats, and I thought, okay, yeah, the working man, the people that actually hold this country together, that keep everything moving, you know, those are the ones that we should really care about. And you know, if we're not careful, the rich will walk all over them. So they need, you know, somebody to defend them and to take care of them. And you know, I'm one of those people. I wasn't rich, you know, my family had no money at all.
Yeah.
So naturally I gravitated to that. Then the Democratic Party changed. Okay, no longer was it about the working man. Suddenly it was full of like these billionaire techies that have never done an honest day's labor in their entire miserable lives. Okay, and I realized, wait a minute, things have changed here.
Yeah.
There is no more Democratic Party of the kind that I used to know about, okay, that I used to belong to. And that's when I became a conservative. And a conservative in a stronger sense than most people who call themselves conservatives today, because they're really just cuckolded by the liberals. No, they're afraid to say boo to them. I mean, look.
Well, you know, it's funny. I was told some years ago, this was probably 2016, 2017, someone said, Michael, you can't use the word cuckold as an insult because that's racist or sexist. And I said, look, I'm of Italian extraction. Cuckold is the oldest insult in the Italian culture. That, you know, even
the Sicilians have a gesture for that.
Yes, rock star gesture. I think the name of the rock star, also Sicilian, who popularized it. and a very famous, I can't believe his name escapes me, but that sign, it's the symbol of the cuckold. I said, there's nothing wrong about you. It's a very funny insult, and it's descriptive as well.
Apparently some
That's
married
Imalo.
couples, apparently there are married couples that actually, that's their hobby.
right.
I can't see it myself, but
Not my thing. Right, but and it's obviously it's disordered. Nobody wants, I don't think rationally anyone would say that's a good way to live your life. And what you're saying is that there are people who call themselves conservatives, and really they're just squish, cuckolded, or they just give in.
It's a figure of speech.
Yeah.
We're not accusing them of literal cuckoldry.
No, they might be. I don't know. I'm not in the bedroom.
But basically, they are letting the other party wear the pants.
Yeah.
And they're putting on their little panties.
Yeah.
And doing whatever they're told. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's what that's the modern rhino, the modern Republican. That's what most of them are. And believe you me, most of them wouldn't do a damn thing for anybody else.
Right.
They're basically into their own thing, their own self-interest, and they just never take any risks on behalf of the American people anymore. And that offends me, because we're paying them and they've promised to represent our interests, and they're not doing it.
Well, you look at really basic issues, something like immigration. Well, and Trump really won on the immigration issue. Something like immigration, this is no insult to anyone around the world who wants to come to the United States. Frankly, it's not even an insult to the illegal aliens who are pouring across the border. But I think anyone can agree, taking in 1 million legal immigrants and 2 million illegal immigrants annually, it's going to be more than that this year probably, on top of that, 3 million people per year.
Taking them in?
Or,
Whose houses are they living in?
you're
See
right.
them living in anybody from Washington, D.C.'s house?
No, it's not Martha's Vineyard. It's not
No,
Southampton.
You don't see too many of them there.
No. But it's a political strategy that is opposed. If you look at public opinion polls, the vast majority of Americans, including lots and lots of Democrats, want to drastically reduce this immigration issue. And yet, doesn't matter which party gets elected, the border remains open. The West, especially after World War II, you've got this huge boom in the West. You've got the second half of the 20th century. Now we're into the 21st century. That's where all the money is. That's where all the opportunity is. And so just naturally, people want to flood in there. And if you've got relatively lax immigration policies.
Well, we used to have, in order to get into this country, you used to have to prove that you were of value, that you could offer it something. It wasn't just about us giving to you. If you were an immigrant and you wanted to come here, you had to show that you had something to offer yourself. Okay? You had to, learn English. You had to go through Ellis Island or wherever. You had to learn English. You had to learn about the Constitution. You had to buy in to our political.
But now it seems you're incentivized to hate America.
You also had a medical
civilization.
That's right. And now who would be doing that? Any real American? Not that I know of. Okay, it's a contradiction in terms.
So what's the end game here? I mean, if America
the end game is world domination. They're going global. That's what it's all about.
So if we've got this oligarchic group, this self-appointed oligarchic group that I, in my naivete in freshman year of college, I say, oh, the World Economic Forum, or what? Forget even WEF. There are other international organizations.
At least
the
you know
United
what it
Nations.
was. I didn't even know it existed.
The European Union, which the Brits have pulled themselves out of. But there are these groups throughout the West that want to erase national borders, essentially.
That's correct. And they want to deracinate everybody that lives inside.
And yes, erase culture. I say this as the relatively mocha-skinned Southern Italian here. But there is a
mocha my ass.
There is a sense that no, there is no. We don't want to even just look at Europe. We don't want there to be French culture and German culture and British culture.
I know, what a tragedy that is. Look at those cultures. They're beautiful.
All the most beautiful cultures in the world, and the French. And the French on top of all those beautiful cultures too. Yeah, right.
You know what the Brits always say, right? France is much too good for the French.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So then what is your thought? Moving forward, we're in this very bad political spot right now. It would seem to me we've been in bad spots before. Tower of Babel didn't seem particularly pleasant. The solution to that didn't seem particularly pleasant to live
Divide
with
and conquer.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what happens now? Do we just need to field a good candidate, or no? It's too far gone.
The political system is kind of shot. Okay, so I'm afraid it's going to take some activism. We're going to have to look, I don't want anything violent to happen. I don't want a new revolution, but I will tell you this, that if people don't act as though they are willing to fight for their own rights, they're going to lose those rights. Founding fathers knew it. You know, it's written right into the Constitution. Okay,
we'll
if we
fight.
don't fight for our rights, we're going to lose them. Simple
Not
as
just
that.
your right to party.
You mentioned everyone getting stuck with the Fauci ouchie for the last 2 years, and you know it's so extremely effective that we all need to take 55 boosters just to marvel at the perfection and efficacy of it. Are you anti-vaccine generally? I take it you're anti-COVID.
Well, I bought into the COVID thing at first, and I went out and bought, Gina and I bought, gas masks for us, and those N100 masks, and and I advised people what to do so as not to get infected with the deadly COVID. And then I noticed that it wasn't really killing. I live in northern Missouri. Nobody up there was wearing masks. Nobody up there. I mean. And nobody was dying of COVID-19. So I realized, well, there's got to be something a little bit off about this, right? And so I, kind of like started getting away from it. And then I noticed that, then I noticed that it was being used as a pretext for something called the Great Reset.
And again, I mean, to bring back the World Economic Forum, this is a page on the WEF website. It's the Great Reset of the global economies and the global political order.
Right. But they're very open about it, okay? And there have been, white papers written in the past about using just this methodology to get everybody behind the globalist agenda, right?
You will own
Operation,
nothing and
Warp
be
Speed
happy.
was part of that, And
So then does Trump bear some responsibility for giving
he
Fauci the
definitely bears
microphone?
responsibility. My question is, does he really know what's going on, or has he surrounded himself with people that are misleading him about what's going on? I would like to believe that Donald Trump has been misled. But if he knows how much damage those so-called vaccines have actually caused, and he's still pushing them, then we have a problem.
If you raise any questions about even the COVID vaccines, which don't do, at the very least, they don't do what Biden and Fauci and Walensky told us they would do, namely to stop you from contracting the virus or spreading it. At the very least, it doesn't do that. You're called a crazy anti-vaxxer.
Well, that's called cognitive dissonance. Right. I mean, who's crazy? If you can look at the reality of what is happening and you can deny it and call anyone who believes in it a conspiracy theorist, what kind of person are you? Well, you're obviously a nut job, a kook, a moron. You're something like that, right? And that's what all these people are. As I say, conspiracy makes the world go round, okay?
Now, it's
Now,
all in my head.
beyond finance or beyond these NGOs, you mentioned the intelligence agencies. Something that occurs to me is if I were working at an intelligence agency, they never invited me, never got that invite on ZipRecruiter.
Perhaps you should consider yourself lucky.
I think I do. I certainly do.
Especially
but
now.
If I were at an intelligence agency and I heard there was a guy with the highest IQ ever recorded who was contradicting the liberal establishment agenda, I'd probably have a file on that guy. Have you had any run-ins with the?
Some interest has been shown. It was oblique.
With the Gestapo?
They're very, let's just put it this way. I managed to, meet, a couple, 3 people that are involved in that line of work when there was no actual reason that should have happened. In other words, but they're very cagey about it. If they want to recruit you, they'll probably do it obliquely. If you don't apply to actually join an intelligence service, but they're interested in you, they will try to get you involved with someone who they control. And then he will then vector you around and put you in touch with the right people. But you've got to accept the agenda sight unseen before that happens. Right? You've more or less got to let them know that, okay, no matter what they're actually planning to do, I'm going to go along with it because I really, really want to be in the CIA or the Defense Intelligence Agency or the NSA or whatever, right?
No such agency, as we used to call it. There's no such agency.
I like that. Yeah, but you have to somehow display some sort of willingness before you will be directly approached by them. Okay, and I guess I never displayed that kind of willingness. So I'm not there. I'm not in the intelligence community. I am, periodically in touch with people who are in the intelligence community, in various email distributions and things like that, but that's it.
Since we're already in it, there are going to be people out there who say, this guy is talking about every conspiracy theory I ever heard in the whole book. Since we're already in it, to take a slightly different tack, but still within the realm of what Wikipedia is going to call it, conspiracy theories.
Okay.
Do you believe in aliens?
Hold on. Okay, this is probably going to skip ahead. And then I talked about this earlier and explained it. So let's just save a little bit of time. About right there should be fine. Save.
Play.
That's right.
And it's especially interesting
Bob.
when it comes to you, because you're a guy at the very highest end of the intelligence spectrum, and you've lived the life of a blue-collar guy.
That's right. I wanted meaning in my life. It's like I say, I wanted meaning above all things. You got to make sure, that you decide up front when you're a young man, if you want to accomplish anything, who do you serve? Truth or mammon? Okay, you don't have a choice. You do have a choice, but you can't do both at once. Okay, it's either going to be truth, which is the same as God. I mean, truth and God are to some extent synonymous.
Yeah.
Or
Good, the true, and beautiful.
Or it's going to be money. And if you choose money, if you choose mammon,
That's the
then you're
truth,
going to be
isn't it?
serving mammon, who
That's the way it works
has
out.
Changes your
the
saying from I'd rather know God than be right.
globalists at this point, because they control all the wealth and power.
So you
Rather know God than
mentioned,
be rich.
I think we totally agree, Marxism is a very terrible ideology that's caused a lot of suffering in the world. You would agree with
I'm
that?
not wasting this cigar.
Absolutely not. No, take your time, please. But so we would agree with that. We're pretty anti-Marxist, yes.
Well, I'm very anti.
Yes.
It's a terrible philosophy.
Yes.
I mean, it's as full of holes as you can imagine.
Even though all the geniuses at Princeton or whatever, there's all these Marxists.
Look, that's a closed.
Okay,
that's a
first
club,
of all, it's Princeton.
you don't have the key to the clubhouse, you're not getting in. Okay, they won't even talk to you.
Yeah.
No academic will take me on. Will actually start arguing, even in his own field at this point, because they know they're going to lose, and they will. Any academic, anytime.
But now, yes, I mean, I'm as anti-higher education cartel as
He's the
there
mental
can be.
clinic.
Right? They're indoctrination mills. You have to look at the entire educational system as being one great big indoctrination factory.
Yeah.
And the people that work in it, those faculty members, they're chosen, they're selected as indoctrinators of the youth.
Yes, and they peddle Marxism, but what I like what you just said. I mean, you boiled it down even more simply. A lot of politics comes down to, well, you're a socialist, I'm anti-socialist. Well, yeah, I'm very anti-socialist, and well, you're a capitalist or this or that. But you seem to be raising some problems with capitalism too. Man cannot serve two masters.
Well, there are two kinds of capitalism. One of them is laissez-faire capitalism. Then you're supporting your family, you're trying to get ahead, you're trying to enjoy a good and comfortable life, but you're not forgetting about God while you do it. Then you've got monopoly capitalism. And this is what libertarians and other people sometimes forget, that laissez-faire capitalism, because money gravitates, it's like a black hole, takes money to make money.
Right.
You got to have a bunch. Once you have a bunch of it, it comes more and more easily to you. Yeah, I think you're out of butane.
I know. Let me see if I can will. There we go. Hey, how about that? Not quite miraculous, but good. So monopoly capitalism is the sort of thing we call crony capitalism, crooked capitalism, but it's...
But basically, you're not just controlling the supply side, you're controlling the markets. Okay? You're told what you can buy. Well, we've decided that everybody
Hey,
should
MJ.
be using electric cars.
Welcome.
We're not going to sell
MJ.
the other kind anymore.
Right.
Okay? That's monopoly capitalism. And because if you control the manufacturing, the industry, right? If you're a trade organization or a trade association and you control that industry, you can literally control the market. You can only buy what you have the opportunity to buy, what they're giving you the opportunity to buy. And these days, they're only giving you what they want you to have. Those are the only choices you have as a consumer.
They're doing this with light bulbs too, and it drives me nuts. They tried to do it 10 years ago. They are trying to ban incandescent light bulbs, which I find to be much more beautiful than those ugly LED or any of the other light bulbs. I just, in my home, I just find it warmer and more beautiful to have, and they were trying to outlaw it.
Well, my wife agrees with you.
Really?
Well, we have, those old style incandescent bulbs in the bedroom, for example.
Yeah, I think of my Christmas tree. I don't want those little LEDs. They're harsh. They're ugly. They're blue. I want the warmer light. And yet,
Well, exactly. But they do make LEDs, by the way, in almost all frequencies these days.
Really?
So
Okay.
you can get daylight LEDs.
Okay. That's
They're
a compromise.
costly, though. I mean, they're way more expensive than an incandescent bulb.
So this actually raises even a different question here. We've talked about
like 50
truth.
cents a light bulb.
We've talked about goodness. There's one more transcendental. Beauty.
Correct.
Where does beauty factor into your thoughts about everything?
Well, now here we get, into the CTMU. We all know about the monetary economy, right? You get money, you buy things, you increase your wealth. The economy is actually telic. It's a vast favor bank. I do for you, you do for me. This is actually the trading system that exists in nature.
Can you define the word telic?
Transactional.
Yes, telesis, it means it's a fundamental, it's the mnemonic substance of which everything else is composed.
Okay.
Okay? In other words,
I think I've
some people, a physicist says, well, that's energy. Energy is the basic substance of which everything is mass energy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm saying, no, you've got to go up a step. You need something more general with other properties that, for instance, accommodate information.
Okay.
You need something more general than energy to explain that. Or if you want to, you can play a little semantic game and then gradually expand the definition of energy so that it takes everything in, right? But I call the ultimate extension of that telesis.
Okay.
Basically, it's a fundamental form of intentionality. And if you want to talk about the intentionality of God, then you're talking about a dirty word in academia. And what is that? Teleology. Okay? The will of God.
Right.
Yeah.
The things have a purpose.
That's correct.
Yes. And so you're saying that there is this telic aspect to the economy too. We're not just
that is fundamentally the only aspect, okay? Money is an abstraction of that. It's a very specified, controllable, physically commoditized version of telesis, okay? And you have a certain group, a certain crowd that has established a monopoly on that. Now, when you establish a monopoly on money, you're actually monopolizing the telic economy as well. How? People invest their telesis in what can make them money, okay? Right. Unless you're like me and you prefer meaning in your life, okay? Truth, all right? That's what telesis is. It encompasses not just money, but truth and meaning.
That the way that money and the monetary economy is manipulated will take into it many more aspects of life that and maybe steer them the wrong way. I'll try to bring it to earth, at least in the way I was thinking about it, which is I hate modern buildings. I hate them. They're so ugly.
Drab and Soviet style.
They are, and they bring me down. And I walk into Grand Central, a nice old building in New York, and I feel like a king, and I feel dignified, and I feel like a full human being. And then I walk into that. They've actually recently tried to make it better, but
imagine how you'd have felt in the Notre Dame Cathedral before they burned it down.
Which I never got to see. I never got to go in.
Me neither.
So what is that experience like? I wonder, for someone who's just got just this perhaps quirk of birth where you just have this extraordinarily high IQ, what is the experience of life? Is it kind of funny and amusing, or is it extremely annoying?
Well, somebody, got a little charge out of it, got a little amusement out of it, because I sure as hell didn't most of the time. But I don't complain. This is God's world. God gave me my lot, knew that I was going to go after meaning instead of money, and everything that came after was more or less like clockwork.
If you had any say in the matter, which you don't, but in which you certainly did not, would you choose to be born very intelligent, or of middling intelligence, or of low intelligence?
What do you think the answer is? I wouldn't trade my mind for anyone else's.
Me neither.
Okay, simply because I understand what the difference is now. You lose if you're not intelligent, you don't cultivate your intelligence and make the most of it, eventually you lose sight of truth entirely. And that's what has happened to most of these people. They're adapting, okay, we've got a narrative. I'm not going to get ahead in life unless I accept the narrative. So they accept the narrative. It's called adaptation. Okay, it's artificial. It's not like natural selection, you know, where nature selects you.
We talk
Okay,
about that on my show.
You're being selected now by a bunch of ideologues, a bunch of people who want you to adopt a certain way of looking at things because they have all the money and power and they want to keep it forever. And that's why the Christian church has fallen so radically out of favor with most of these people, even among certain Christians, high-ranking Christians. All right, it shows up in everything they say, and I don't want to mention any particular pope. On the other
You're
hand,
referring to a certain Mr. Francis, present vicar of Christ. Well, he certainly he says these things that are so puzzling and potentially heretical, and certain cardinals have raised dubia, have raised doubts and said, could you please answer this? It sounds like you've said something heretical. And the answer is always, well, you see, the Papa was misunderstood. He was misinterpreted in the La Repubblica newspaper. And you say, well, you know, if he keeps being misreported and misinterpreted, why does he keep giving the interviews to these atheist and far leftist journalists? I don't know. It's not mine to answer.
Why does he keep having lunch with a bunch of trannies?
And I mean, this is something that I think needs to be addressed by the Catholic Church itself if it wants to stop shedding Christians right and left. You see, because people are not stupid. I mean, some of them can convince themselves of things that aren't true, but basically human beings are intelligent, you know, and you're cheating your intelligence when you subscribe to these narratives. And apparently the Pope, you know, who communicates directly with God, he buys into these narratives, and that's a contradiction in terms.
You know, it's funny you mention Papa Francesco, because he's come after the Latin Mass, and a lot of young...
You know, he claims to have been a bouncer at one point in his life.
I read that somewhere. He doesn't... You know, you look like you could be a bouncer. Papa Francesco does not look like he was a bouncer. I don't know. Do you buy it?
Pope Francis was a bouncer on a trampoline, maybe.
Maybe in a really light-duty nightclub, he might have made it, you know what I'm saying? Certainly not in most of the ones that I worked in.
He's gone after the Latin Mass, and I've noticed that young Catholics, I fell away. I was basically an atheist for about 10 years. Something that drew me, there were a lot of things that drew me back, but something that drew me back was the Latin Mass, and specifically the beauty, the smells and the bells, and the idea that the priest is facing the altar, and we're all facing together, and he's leading us in our worship of God. And it's not just, acoustic guitars and feel good and be a nice person to, and making it all about us. And
it's a sense of the sacred.
The sense of the sacred and sense
of ritual.
And a sense of the beautiful. It's why I asked that question about the role of beauty in your...
He calls it beauty.
That's once again a function of the telic economy, okay? Basically, it's synonymous with teleology. Something cannot be anti-teleological or deviate from the will of God and still be objectively beautiful. All right? I mean, there are people who will who can take a religious icon or a picture of Jesus Christ, for example, and urinate on it, like Larry David. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, or even there was the famous picture, Piss Christ, right? It was a picture. It was a photograph of a crucifix.
That's disgusting.
Disgusting. It was funded by the federal government. I think it received funding.
They paid for that?
I believe it received some amount of funding from, I could be getting this wrong, so don't quote me, but I thought it was the National Endowment for Arts or one of those organizations.
Really?
It wouldn't surprise me.
I could be wrong, but
that's bad. Real bad. So, I don't know what to say in defense of these people. I don't think there is a defense for them. Okay? But if that's the kind of thing that they regard as art, then they are not in touch with beauty. And the reason they're not in touch with beauty is that they're not in touch with truth.
But I was told by all my modern teachers that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. It's a subjective thing, and it's not objective.
It is, but unfortunately, some beholders leave something to be desired in their aesthetic sense.
You're saying there is an objective standard?
Yes, absolutely. Is it consistent with teleology or is it not? Right? Obviously, basically you've got this identity, God, who is perfection. Anything that deviates from that cannot, by definition, be good or beautiful. Okay? Now, nature experiments. I mean, it goes from one thing to another and tries certain things out. But once it becomes evident that something isn't working, then it's not consistent with teleology. Once it proves to be degenerate and causes people to become demoralized and sick of life, then we have to do away with it.
I've been told that we need to tolerate also, all sorts of.
God does not tolerate evil, and neither should we.
That
That's
I
a
agree.
beautiful way to put it. So what do you make of the modern right? The modern left is always pushing this stuff, but a lot of the modern right says, look, there was a prominent columnist who called himself conservative. I guess he sort of was for a while, but now he's pretty firmly on the left.
Mhm.
And he said, I don't like Drag Queen Story Hour, but we need to tolerate it. It's one of the blessings of liberty. If we don't tolerate Drag Queen Story Hour,
What?
yes.
No.
Blessing of liberty?
Well, it's in the preamble to the Constitution. I think James Madison's rolling over in his grave at the very thought of that.
Constitution mentions trannies, does it?
Not in my last read.
I mean, I was raised in an environment where we were, basically taught to be tolerant
Mhm.
of people, of their foibles, and if they wanted to be a little bit deviant, well, a little bit of deviation is good. You can't just be locked into one rigid way of looking at things. So I developed tolerance. But now they've become militant. They've become rabid. They're shoving it down children's throats, and it's just not good for
Radicalized.
society.
Yeah.
Okay? It violates the biological imperative of survival.
Welcome, Shizzy Raiders.
To become totally sexual. There's a reason that men and women exist and that they mate and create children. It's for the survival of the human race. Okay? That has to remain paramount. That's got to be the preferred mode of existence. Okay, you've got to buy into that. Now, if you want to deviate a little bit in your private life, and you've got somebody who agrees to be deviant along those lines, and you want to get together in the privacy of your own abode,
You're not going to have Chris Langan knocking on their door.
I'm not going to knock on their door. It's none of my business. It's for them to work out with God Almighty. Okay, and if they can do that, more power to them. I don't know how they're going to do it, but give them a chance. Okay. But when they go out and they have gay day parades where they're cavorting, nude, and they're going into children's restrooms and so forth, that's where we have to draw the line.
Absolutely.
I mentioned this modern writer who is very misguided on this particular point. Are there thinkers alive today who you think are worth reading? People always say, what's the reading list? What should I read? What should I listen to? Are there philosophers?
Oh, we got a lot of them.
Popular writers.
There are no academic philosophers that are worthy, as far as I'm concerned, of attention.
What about
It's not because all of them are stupid or anything like that. It's because they bought into the party. They're academics.
Yeah.
Okay. They cannot violate, the academic, communistic, atheistic narrative and get away with it. Okay. And if you're in that system, then obviously you're playing along with it. And you can't do that and be an honest, truthful philosopher.
Are there non-academic writers, thinkers, philosophers who you would recommend people read?
I'm sure they're out there. I haven't encountered any, not recently.
What about,
wow.
that gets rid of the
That's
living
terrible.
people. What about those dead guys? All those old dead guys going back to ancient Greece or anywhere in the middle?
Does he
Well,
like
a lot of those
Voltaire?
guys had something very useful to say.
Who, if a listener right now said, I want to know who, beyond his own writing, who the smartest man in the world wants me to read, who would you recommend?
Well, I would say that you should go back and definitely read Aristotle and Plato and Socrates. Okay, start with that and then go up and then, work your way through. There are a lot of smart guys. Read Plotinus, read about Neoplatonism, right? And once you find out about Neoplatonism, then you can go back to the ancient Vedic religion, right? Because it's basically the same thing in different language. And as you know, then Neoplatonism kind of became a mainstay of medieval Christianity.
Yeah.
Okay. And there's a lot to that. So that takes us up through, and it takes us up through some of the medieval Christian philosophers, Anselm, Aquinas, Augustine.
Yep.
And beyond that, then it starts getting dicey.
Humanism?
You see, even when you get up to like Rene Descartes, for example, everything becomes dualistic. You've got these Cartesian spaces that more or less exclude the observer. There are no images of God in a Cartesian space.
Chris, have you ever, because you worked at bars, you ever hear about the horse who shows up to the bar and asks the bartender for a drink? And the bartender says, "Horse, man, you've been here every night this week. I think you're an alcoholic." And the horse says, "I don't think I am." Poof, the horse disappears. Now you see, you will understand this. This is a joke about Descartes, who says, "I think, therefore I am." But if I had told you that part first, I would have put Descartes before the
Hey,
horse.
Robert.
I like it.
This is the only
That's
circumstance in which that joke has ever landed. I'm really pleased. I finally got a laugh out of that joke.
That's a very intelligent joke.
You need smarter friends.
Much more intelligent than the ones I usually hear.
Well, thank you.
Especially in a bar.
that at least I can believe. So I'm that digression aside, I'm glad you bring this up because people always ask me, they say, what philosophers should I read? I say, one, why are you asking me? But two, they always say, should I read John Locke? Should I read Rousseau? Should I read John Rawls? Should I read this, that, and the other? I say, maybe focus a little earlier first. And it's funny you mention, once you get up to Aquinas, after him, things start to go a little kooky.
A little south.
Yeah.
Until now, of course, all of that is completely out of fashion. And most of these modern philosophers are, they're really, Frankfurt School type people. And that's cultural Marxism, which of course is just the social program of the Marxists.
But Chris, even though I just wrote a book last year on cultural Marxism, I have been told, reliably informed by Wikipedia, that's just a crazy conspiracy theory.
Yes, well, Wikipedia seems to think I'm a crazy conspiracy theory too. You read my biography there?
Not recently.
Everything bad that you can say, and basically, I was exiled from Wikipedia years ago. I went in and said, no, wait a minute here. No, I'm not an intelligent design creationist per se. I have a different approach to teleology and all that. And I was immediately kicked off Wikipedia. Okay, so they can say whatever they want to in my biography in Wikipedia. There's not a thing I can do about it.
Because you even suggested the idea of some sort of intelligent design.
That is correct. Well, I've been getting trolled ever since around the year 2000. Well, that goes back further than that, really. But when I went on national television and said, well, the existence of God is actually amenable to logical analysis, and you can show that there is a God, provided you have the right. That was enough. Intelligent design creationists, get out of here. So I've been, and these people are, by the way, these new atheists, I mean, they're adamant.
You're talking about Richard Dawkins, Daniel Dennett.
I'm talking about Richie Dawkins, Daniel Dennett, Sam Harris. Well, I don't know. Chris Hitchens,
yeah.
I mean, guys of this nature, PZ Myers, and people like that. I had a run-in with Myers. I mean, he hates my guts. He hated my guts 20 years ago. None of them will mention my name now though, because they know that they can be crushed. Deep down inside, they know it. They won't come anywhere near me. At some point, these people decided that they had to exclude anybody who could beat them. Okay? That's where the cancellation thing began, really. It's a new atheist thing. And now, since the new atheists are a lot more fashionable than Christians are, that's the order of the day.
I blame my falling away from the church on just being a punk 13-year-old boy. But the second thing I blame is the new atheists.
Samesies.
They were very popular at the time, and I was very taken with them. Chris Hitchens, he's a funny guy. I thought, okay, he must be a smart guy.
Excellent speaker.
Yeah.
Incisive, witty, but obviously he just hates God. I mean, he makes that very clear.
So you're
all religions are evil because they mislead people and drag people away from,
But you didn't just say that he doesn't believe in God. You said he hates God.
Hates God. Dawkins obviously hates God. Why is there evil in the world? Usually, that's what it comes down to.
Right.
Right? Would a just God tolerate all of the evil that is occurring in the world? And the fact of the matter is there can be no good, there can be no pleasure without pain. There can be no good without evil. Okay? God knows that there is always the possibility to commit evil acts.
Free will, right? Yeah.
Right. But he has given us free will. Okay? He bequeathed that we're his images. He is free, therefore we are free. And he expects us to fight against evil. So stop it from triumphing here.
Then given will, and the fact that you use these words hate and love, very often when people talk about God, it's as though it were some academic exercise. Well, do I believe in God? But you're using verbs that are more active than that.
Yes.
Hate and love. Do you think that our discussion or our understanding of God therefore must be active and participatory rather than merely academic.
Absolutely. And furthermore, it must be rational as well as faith-based. A lot of religionists are fideistic, which means they rely completely on faith and say that we can have no knowledge of God. Wasn't that nonsense?
Yeah.
Okay. You have to know what you got faith in.
Yeah.
Okay. How can you invest faith in something that you don't know what it is? You need at least an elementary description of it before you can predicate, before you can attribute faith to it, before you can invest belief in it. All right. If you invest belief in X, but you don't know what X is that meaningful? Obviously not. So faith and rationality are indelibly coupled. Okay. There's just no other way to talk about it.
Yeah.
So as soon as you hear somebody say, well, it's entirely a matter of faith and we can believe whatever we want to, have faith in whatever we want to, that makes no sense at all to me.
I totally agree with that. And it does bother me when religious people speak in that way in modern times. It's funny, though, you mentioned Thomas Aquinas. Was there ever a more rational guy in the world than Thomas? The guy who wrote, to every question in religion, he had 3 objections and then answers to the objections. Quite a rational
We've
fellow.
gone to another Aristotle. And I mean, just, and all of these early Christian philosophers are now out of fashion. Nobody pays attention anymore.
So
except Christians.
Right.
Real ones, not fake ones.
Practicing ones.
Yeah.
So then, I know I've kept all of your time, but I don't care, darn it. You're here in Nashville and I've got all these
I'm
questions.
just fine.
Do you have religious practice?
There is, yes. Well, let's just put it this way. I don't currently attend church, but up until several years, I started doing like my own kind of like thing with preaching, right? So I decided that I didn't, but I was for about 10, 15 years, I went to a little country church up the road from us.
Yeah.
Right now, I live on a road where there used to be 3 historic churches. 2 of them were burned down. Arson.
No, not accidental.
Not accidental, no. And they were historical, Civil War era churches, okay? But one was left, right? And it was north of us, about 2.5 miles north of us on Route P there. So I attended that church pretty religiously, very regularly for a long time. Now, as it happened, the last thing that I heard, it's run by a wonderful lady that actually takes care of most of what goes on there, and it's got a good pastor, right? But, I finally decided that, okay, what I have to do is go out and start talking about these things myself. So since then, that's what I've been doing.
I wish you were here on a Sunday. I could take you to my good Latin Mass parish here. I think you would like it.
I was twice baptized a Catholic way back when, but it's like I say, I was a kid.
Yeah.
One of my aunts was a nun, Aunt Sybil, right? So, I have some fond memories of what it's like to be a real Catholic. But I don't think that kind of Catholicism is in vogue.
It's certainly not in vogue.
Yeah.
When young people are searching for meaning, as you say, you looked for meaning in your life. It reminds me of Viktor Frankl, right? Man's search for meaning. He says, search for meaning is man's primary motivator, more than sex, more than anything else.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
But that's not the way it is anymore. They just want the money. They won't even believe that you're intelligent if you don't have a lot of money.
Right. Well, that's what people always ask you. They say, why aren't you a billionaire?
Why aren't I a billionaire?
That's what I've seen
Because
people ask.
billionaires hate my guts. See, I don't go along with look, they have to give you the opportunity to make money. You need to have connections. In order to make money, you need to make friends out of people who have a lot of it.
If you'd had the connections, would you have striven to make money?
Not at the expense of truth. No, I'd have gone after meaning first. Now, I used to think that, well, it should be possible in theory to go after both. Then I discovered that wasn't necessarily true.
Yep.
If you go after truth too hard, then you're going to make a bad impression on mammon, on the people with all the money, and eventually you're going to be canceled out of any sort of comfortable life.
And there's also just a time issue, right? I mean, if you dedicate yourself to, I don't know, doing spreadsheets or something, you're probably not going to have a ton of time to pursue truth. Or am I wrong about that? Am I just underestimating?
You're absolutely right. Eventually that's what you become, We are what we do, more or less. So you've got to make up your mind what you want to spend your time doing. And I consider it to be better to seek truth and meaning and God than it is to pursue money. Now, who agrees with me these days?
I agree with you.
Not many.
I'd like to have it all, but I certainly
Well,
agree
I
with
would
you.
like to bring mankind back to the point where we care about those things
Yeah,
again.
because of course then the question
Because
is,
you really can't take it with you.
you know, if you just focus your life on money, just for money's sake, just to get stuff, you know, you can't take it with you. Eventually,
See?
all that stuff is going to decay.
Oh, well, yes, of course
you
it is.
can't buy
but
your way
a
into
lot of
heaven.
these rich people are into something called transhumanism. They don't think that they're going to have to leave. So there's no problem with not being able to take it with you because you're not going anywhere. You're going to upload your consciousness to a computer, you see.
I've heard this. It's a very popular idea. A lot of my young friends will tell me, Michael, we might not even die. We're as though every generation in
God.
history hasn't had the same delusion. But
Everything has
I
an
always
end.
laugh at it. But very wealthy, very powerful, ostensibly intelligent people take this seriously. We're just going to upload our brains.
Ostensibly intelligent.
That's an important caveat. You don't think we're just going to upload our brains to the cloud or something?
You know, that's what reality already is.
We've already done it.
Self-simulation. We've already done it. We are living in the display of a simulation, a self-simulating universe, right? And we are going to be uploaded when we're done with this simulation. We're going to be uploaded to the source of all truth, meaning, and power. Then, depending on the decision that is made by that entity, we can be redistributed to another universe, a heaven, a hell.
A new creation.
Agreed, MJ.
Pardon me?
A new creation, right? The idea, the resurrection of the body, right?
That is correct.
So before these genius gazillionaires who fancy that they're going to upload their brains to the IBM computer or something, before they meet their particular judgment, before they shuffle off this mortal coil, do you think there's any chance that they're going to figure out the secret and not have to face death?
No.
No.
No way.
It's like I say, Soros is probably the best among them, and he's far. You know how it is. I mean, I guess the Hindus had a better way of looking at this. You know, in Christianity, there's one goal: salvation. Okay.
Yeah.
In Hinduism, there are 4 goals. Okay. You've got kama, artha, dharma, and moksha, right? And kama is sensual pleasure, right? And artha is being able to acquire wealth and power. Then you've got dharma, which is righteousness. And then above dharma, you've got moksha, which is salvation. That's actual union with the absolute or with God, okay? The people running the world right now, all of these people that you just mentioned, are stuck in numbers 1 and 2. They haven't made it to dharma, and they're never going to make it to moksha. That's why they want to upload their consciousness to a machine. They know that God isn't going to take them back if they continue doing what they're doing. All right, so they want to displace reality itself by recreating reality in a mechanical form that then they can control.
Do you think there's any relation between the transhumanist movement and the transgender movement? The idea that we're just going to escape our bodies?
Yes, I do. The idea, I think, is that you can throw off all constraint. You can throw off the constraints of reality, you can including constraints of gender. That's what I think the commonality is. And I think these are, they're anti-teleological, both of them.
I agree.
Right, we do have certain constraints. Reality is full of constraints, and we're better off recognizing what they are.
Before I let you go, as we sit here in the clouds, in some simulation of the clouds here, before I let you go, people are going to be asking, so what do I do? What should I do right now? Assuming we're not going to launch the Second American Revolution or anything like that. What should I do in my own life? Even maybe beyond any political questions.
Search for God. Ask God to establish a personal relationship with you. It's available. You're attached to God by your soul, okay? There's this soul that attaches you to God. You can receive the will of God into yourself, and to some extent the power of God into yourself, but you've got to be receptive. If you're not receptive, then you're cutting yourself off from God, okay? And once you do that, then you do not share the identity of reality itself, and you're done. Once your physical body expires, there is nothing that will carry you because you have denied it and rejected it. You follow me?
I do.
That's what people need to do.
I do. I think that's good advice.
I'm glad you agree.
Chris.
That's good for you.
It is. It's good at sort of like reaching out and grabbing you. Do this. Do that. Search for God. It's as though to shake the audience.
But we
Chris,
want to
this
do with
has
our
been
kids. Listen to me.
a true pleasure. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for making the trek.
Well, it's been my pleasure. I don't travel very often. You know, I've told you the reasons for that. Right? But I'm glad I made this trip, Michael.
Thank you, Chris.
That was awesome. You're muted. I can't hear you.
Okay, shoot. Sorry.
There you go.
All right, cool. Yeah, I had the other mic on. All right, cool. Hope you guys enjoyed that. You know, I think it's really interesting to listen to people's takes on it, especially people who take the time to think about things like that. And it very interested in indeed how it, you know, he took that approach to try to understand things in a way, you know, through logical reasoning and basically taking everything into account. Both the limitations of our reality, the limitations that we can observe, and also philosophies, religions, things that we've known over time, innately thinking about the meaning of life, what happens after death, our connection with God, things of these nature, you know, creation itself in that sense, truth, and so on. So, Shelley, this is my second time watching this. So your first time. Go ahead and give us your takes.
I think he had a lot of interesting things to say. It struck me when he got to the consciousness part, because I've always said, like, my consciousness is very different than a lot of other people's. And the way he broke it down, I was like, all right, that made sense. Then this last part where he got to the whole God and people who are against God, and it didn't, I mean, I knew it on some level, but it didn't really dawn on me that people that go out and they're like, oh, you know, God's not real, God's this, he doesn't do this. The way they're speaking of it, they're trying to convince you he doesn't exist while they're talking about him as if he's a person that's right there. So they're literally accepting his existence, but for some reason they're mad. Like maybe they had some type of rejection, maybe like God let them down, or they thought maybe their prayers didn't get answered. Maybe they feel like, you know, yeah, demoralized by God. So they turned it around early in their mind and decided to hate on something and say he doesn't exist. Just the denial of his existence would be one thing, but the constant fight to have other people deny his existence, to me, that screams jealousy, that screams like envy, that screams resentment. And that means that they've been hurt by their beliefs, which means they still believed in him. And if that anger is still lingering, they still believe in him now. That's your jealous ex-girlfriend or your, you know, burnt ex-girlfriend going around telling people you're a piece of shit because you didn't do what she wanted you to do and you weren't there for her the way she needed you to be there. Like it's a whole thing. Like if you didn't really believe that God existed, you wouldn't waste your time, your limited time on earth, and your energies trying to prove that he doesn't. You just would be like, he doesn't exist. I'm not going to think about it anymore. It is what it is. Yeah. Like, that's just fact. That would be your fact. You wouldn't need to go deeper than that.
Yeah.
That would be your absolute.
Yeah, that pursuit is selfish indeed. And at the same time, you know, it's like kind of where I, you know, among other reasons, had this idea of winning reality is that every day is a fight for reality. And these people are trying to fight to, I guess, in a way, fight for the reality to be the way they want it to be, right? So they can get everybody to agree with them on those terms, then they would feel vindicated for that reality that they want. You know, they want everybody to be like them. So yeah, like I said, it's a selfish pursuit.
Yeah, indeed. But it's not belief based; it's desire based. because they're not
Mhm.
driven by a belief system. They're driven by their desire to have a certain effect or outcome.
Well, it's also
You know?
maybe that he talked about the concept of evil, and that evil is it's anti-reality, right? And it's evil is a sporadic, right? It needs vessels to translate through, and we can see that, right? Because people can make a choice between one and the other, and like I'm saying up here in the seventh veil, right? It's like good versus evil, this underlying condition of this reality that we live in is constant battle between the two. And you see how the energies of either lead to these different kinds of states. And then as we spread out into the different types of um, realities and perceptions that we're dealing with today, right? These can all these veils right here can be different. They can change. They're evolving. It's just this is the system that we're currently being born into, right? Where evil has triumphed, demoralization has triumphed due to these systems that were born out of these outer veils, right? So the outer veils, then good, evil, enslavement, free will. See, there's a little line here if you can't tell right there what divides, and they can manifest through. Well, which one's going to win, right? Which one comes out on top? And then over top of those are the universal parameters, right? The duality, the things that are the constraints of the third dimension, the 3D reality that we live in. So, these things all function within this parameters. And then when you leave this system, you get out into the true nature of reality. Yet you look back and see the whole thing as a whole, and you get your answers. But you also learn what's after death, and through that, the meaning of life, right? And these are all things that he brought up, which is interesting because I made this chart a long time ago before I ever knew who that guy was. And you can see how we kind of like just through thinking logically and oh yeah, take care, Snipes. Thanks for being here. Thinking logically and trying to be very open-minded about it, but also very truthful about what it is here. What it is. We end up in the same place, right? He has his takes on it, and he's developed a system for it, and it's been a passion of his. Reminds him part of just this overarching perception of reality, and like how we get to places, right? So these outer veils for me is explaining how we get to this inner veil system that we're in, and how we can change it by understanding how the game is presented, right? How and how we are having to how we're confined to these things, and that these are the factors and the conditions that we're under, and how we have to deal with these in order to triumph good over evil. We said, evil is destruction, right? And then you see here, I said, long time ago, putting this into this idea of creation versus destruction, light versus darkness, and these different things, these different ways to identify it, right? The universal nature of things. That evil is sporadic. So like as evil starts to spread to bad ideas like Marxism and others that are more things that we can relate to immediately, that they cause destruction, right? And then they manifest through other mechanisms, right? The cultural the Marxism to cultural Marxism to critical theory to wokeism to all these to gender theory, to race theory, to all these destructive, divisive, evil, demoralizing outcomes, right? Through these practices, all with a false promise of something that's never going to come true. And using people and abusing people, creating the cycle of abuse that enables a cycle of control for the worst amongst us that propagate these evil ideas. This is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the outer veils, the energies, and where it comes from. And he basically was saying the same thing, but with a better, I think, explanation of how evil operates, right? And what we can do is and what good and what God expects us to do is to fight it, is to resist it, right? And that we could be taken into it through manipulating practices, which evil understands. So the more it propagates itself, the more powerful it becomes. The more it grips on resources and the things that we need, and the things that we that can cause suffering and whatnot. Persuasion, manipulation, manufactured consent, and so on. That evil manifests itself through individuals, through institutions, and through creations of destructive creations of evil evil people with evil intentions, right? And that's what's kind of what we're facing at today. We're at the cusp of the tipping point of either pushing these things back or becoming or succumbing to them. And we're at the battlefront right now. We're at the, we're in the biggest fight for reality we've been in to date. And some of the other parts of that is being on the age of technology and the ability to control masses through smaller numbers instead of armies, influence, right? And resource control on a global level. These are the battles we're fighting against evil today, and why we have to resist them. And I call this occulted knowledge because it's just hidden knowledge. It's knowledge that like a lot of people don't understand, won't pursue, or have been walled off from seeing or getting to. That's why they're veiled, right? And so if you're beholden to something, right? Say whether it be an idea of atheism or even like a fundamentalist idea of religion, you may be walled off from actually kind of getting into the mechanics of how reality works. That's just what I'm asking people to take a look at and explore here, is the mechanics of it, right? Because we know that we're confined in the third dimension. We know that we have operating parameters here. There's duality, there's balance, there's things like that we are contending with, that are bigger than us, that are outlasting us throughout. They're ideas that outlast lifetimes, right? That continue to persist. Why are they there? How do they function? Where did they come from? These are the things that we talk about in the Outer Veils, right? That's what the Outer Veils series is about. And exploring these ideas is what we do out here to better understand the reality that we're living in every day, and how we're going to resist evil in all its forms, and why we need to think on a new level in terms of our culture and preventative measures, and how we address things that are coming at us in many different forms. Because this is a cycle that repeats, and we need to get a handle on the cycle in order to permanently, or at least for the most part, and a generational level, secure and be in the winning side of reality, like winning our reality from evil is what winning reality is another suggestion towards. So that's why we study the Outer Veils. Now he's got another interview that he's done. It's like 4 hours long, but it's with a mathematician. So you get into like a lot more granular kind of take. If you really dug this and you dug what this guy was saying, you want to know more about him, or get a more granular explanation, like where you're having him have a conversation with a mathematician, somebody who is very scientific minded versus an interviewer like Michael Knowles. You can let me grab that. I'll grab the link for you. I enjoyed this 4-hour interview that he did with this guy. I thought it was really good. It varies. It goes from place to place, but you get a lot more of the drilled downs for those who want to go drill down more on this and get to the mechanics of things and get bigger explanations for it. I'm going to put the link in the chat for you. Right. I'll just throw it out there. There it is right there. Okay. That's the link to the 4-hour interview with the mathematician guy, Kurt Jamungal. I said his name wrong, but that's who he is. And you can really get into the nitty gritty on the CTMU philosophy or theory in that interview. I think you guys will really enjoy it, especially if you enjoyed this. But I kind of want to do the high level introduction to this. I think he hit all the points that we wanted to his explanation for God, what good and evil is, what happens after life and death, and so on, all within the confines of religion as well. I gotta say that he didn't exclude anything. It makes sense all the way around why we have these ideas, where they come from. It aligned a lot on the things that I've been thinking of in terms of what it means to be connected to God, what God is, and without personifying. I haven't felt really comfortable with the personification of God, as that he's just another man like me. I don't think so. I think that it's something bigger. I think when he says that, God maps, he maps to you, and that's the image of God that you have. That makes more sense to me than I think what a lot of people envision as an archetype of it, which is like the physical. Hold on a second. when you think of, okay, he made you in your image, I think from a childhood's perspective, we think, oh, well, then 2 arms, 2 legs, a head, and we look like him. And I don't think that's the case. I think it's what's internal, what our soul looks like is what is a more of a similarity, if you will, a little teeny piece of what is a big, huge light that would be God. Omnipotence means that you're at the 11th dimension and beyond, and able to be in all places, all times, through all probabilities, and that is just impossible to fit into like a 3rd dimension type creation. So as we comes here to work out whatever, have a feel, have experiences, work out different scenarios, understand himself better. We do that for him as Chris would say, operators of. That makes a lot of sense to me as well. Why we have short lifespans, why we return. This is what I've taken out of it. And you guys put your thoughts in the comments and out in the chat, and I'll bring them up, and you can tell me what you got out of it and how it applies to your own personal philosophies or your takes on these topics, because that's what the purpose of the Outer Veil series is to really just put our heads together. Because the truth of the matter is that none of us are going to know until we pass on, until we move on from this plane of existence. None of us are going to actually have concrete evidence of anything and anything to really settle on. And I don't think Chris believes that as well. I think we do our best to try to figure things out based on what we know, evolving the knowledge as we go along, handing it from one place to another, hoping that we come to as close the answer as we can so we can operate on the best level we can for the best outcome, whatever that may be. But Shelly, I'm gonna throw it back to you, and you go ahead and pick up where you want to on that. I just wanted to go ahead and give us some premise for our foundation for conversation here in our last parts of the show.
Okay. Well, like Heidi said something, she disagrees with where he deviates from the living word, which for those of you who don't know what that is, that's basically just the Bible. The thing is with this guy, he's very, like I said in chat, he's very rigidly logical. He has the way his mind works. In order for him to think about something, he's not just going to believe it. He's going to try to go deeper and deeper and deeper, because he's searching for some type of empirical data to reconcile with the fact that he has this faith-based belief that existed before he had any type of self-awareness of what his mind needed to actually form what he believes is a belief. It's weird, I know, but he's not coming at it just faith-based. Like, he's trying to marry the scientific part of his thinking with the faith-based part of his thinking. He's trying to marry them so that he can actually just reconcile it in his brain. I told you, people like this can drive themselves insane because everything that they think in life is provable or it's disprovable. But God is not. God is instinctual, and God is spiritual, and God is faith-based. You need to have a suspension of belief, if you're scientific, to believe in God. There are things that can point in that direction, but there's nothing that he can put his finger on. He can't quantify it. He can't write it down. He can't work out a formula for it. So he has to find a way to do it, or it will probably drive him insane. And I think this is his way of doing that. This is his way of giving. And I mean, God made him this way. So he's always looking for purpose. This might be his purpose, to be able to reach out to other people who think like him and who are having a struggle, basically, in reconciling those two halves of their thinking. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I think he did this really well. And he does deviate from the Bible, but he also doesn't ascribe to one particular faith. He doesn't prescribe to just one particular vein of religion or whatever. He believes that God is like an encapsulation of all of them. Like, basically saying none of us got it right. Only God got it right, and we deviate from that in little ways. But that everybody God notices and God takes, takes it all into account because that's what he wanted. He wanted the variety. He wanted us to stretch our thinking. And still, despite what he can't prove, you realize his heart still comes back to God every time. It doesn't matter what he's learned about. It doesn't matter what he's been told. It doesn't matter what opinions he's encountered. It doesn't matter what data he lacks. He still he still comes back to God every single time. Every single time. And maybe that him being that example is what God intended for him to be. Because he must be like almost like a balm to the other people that are like him who can't reconcile. But I love God and I believe in God. But why? Because I believe in science. That's my life. Science is their life. Scientists are a little wacky. Like they're super rigid. To be able to be a scientist and to have such an extreme faith in God like he does, that's a monumental task in my eyes. And I think he's an example for other people who are having a hard time to follow. So he's not going to reconcile with the Bible the way we know it. I think he's literally taking everything and trying to make like not I don't want to say like a mosh podge, but he's trying to find a space for everything. He's trying to make each thing into its own puzzle piece and then trying to put it together. And I think it's extraordinary. I really do. The fact that even though he has all these theories, his baseline underlying theory is God is perfect and God is truth. And that's it. That's his given. That's the standard that won't change in his thinking. Everything else that goes on around it is just fascinating. The way his mind works, it really is. But that's all I got.
And something that's brought up in the interview that I posted that link to in there, and the Kurt Jamongal interview, which is really nicely done, and it really gets into. Let me just show you like what it looks like. We're not gonna listen to 4 hours, I promise you, but just to kind of give you an idea of the granularity of it, you can see all these chapters, right? And some of the things that are brought up in here. They go into a lot of stuff here. But one thing he brings up in here, he does bring up Christ. He does bring up Christ as realizing as that's the personification of the way to connect with God. So he does lean in more in that direction than any, and understanding that the existence of Christ, recognizing the existence of Christ and what as a doorway, as a mold of by which to reach God, to unify with God, to connect with God. So he said he does recognize that for anybody who's wondering his take on Jesus in this long form interview here. He does talk about that as well as many other topics along the way. Really worth your time if you're just like want to pop something on and listen to it and really get into a deeper understanding of what he's trying to get at, and you find this guy interesting. That I really recommend that interview. I consider doing that one and breaking it into 2 parts, just to let you know. But I with the granularity, the scientific granularity of some of the topics, I just didn't know if it would fly. I figured I'd try this out and see how it goes. If there's an interest, we can break that one up into 2 parts and do it again. I think it's a different experience than what we just saw. Just to let you know, I think you would get something, you would get a lot out of that as well if you're interested in this topic. And it might be something I do maybe a year from now, or I'll bring it back later on if it's not an immediate interest, to revisit the topic and be like, okay, I'm gonna break this into 2 parts. We did this a year ago. You can go back and reference the original interview if you haven't. But I might do this one day. But I recommend if you're hungry for it now, to check it out. And I think what you were saying, Shelley, is too. Just taking things on faith. It's real easy to say, when people are logic driven and they are they're used to having to decipher a lot of the mayhem in this world. It's easy to look at the history of religions, the exploitability of religions, or I'm talking organized religion. Okay, organized religion, and we see it in the Catholic Church. We see it in other places. throughout. We see it in fundamentalist televangelical Christians as well, that it's exploited. These are then taken advantage of to call religion itself corrupt. I think we want to get away from those type of institutions in some way, shape, or form, right? Because that leaves evil an avenue to exploit and pull people away from the truth. And that's something we have to work on as a culture as well, as a group of present individuals here, and how we're going to create the future together, right? To get away from that fundamentalism, because like I've been saying recently, we don't want the pendulum to swing all the way back to the footloose, no dancing because you're going to go to hell if you do mentality that opened up the door for the demoralization and the turning away that's been so easy for cultural Marxists and others to program into people, and even to make people feel like God's not with them. No matter real faith is inner faith, no matter what's happening right now, good, bad, right or wrong in your mind, is all happening for the right reasons. That's where your real faith comes in, that you can overcome, and that you will be better for it in the long run. And that includes anyone who's feeling disconnected from that right now. Keep that faith and it'll come back around. Let's see. Yeah, so I think I got kind of off on a tangent there, but yeah, that's his part on as far as Christ goes, and what that meant. It's like, this is like the model of how to reach, and what God's perfection and that he's trying to work towards, I guess, or like works out from, right? And how to not have God turn away from you. I think those are the key things. And evil wants that, right? Evil wants that because it wants the destruction of reality. And as he said, God is reality. So if you look at it, you may take a few times through with this guy to really get what he's getting at sometimes. But I think for the most part, when you do think logically, you can think about the fact that, take Christianity or the Bible, for instance. It's been rewritten by man. It's been exploited by televangelists and sinful, evil people over the course of time, right? There's no denying that. So to take it as, I think, is anything but if you take it exactly as it is, someone helping you to take it exactly as it is, why would they make you do that and not interpret it? Why have Bible studies? Why have people, why do all that stuff, right? The logical mind is going to go there, and it's going to say, well, then if that's the way it is, then it probably isn't right. You don't want to get to that point, right? You want to find ways to make it make sense. And that's why he was going through all facets of it. So, philosophical, spiritual, energetic.
He's trying to balance his soul and his mind.
Well, yeah, and kind of explain it, right? Explain what else it can be beyond, the preacher at the end of the aisle reading out of a book that couldn't have been edited to the point where it's been, it's not what it was. And we don't know that for sure, because we haven't lived hundreds and thousands of years. We only know, from original versions and how it was constructed. And so, and then if people are telling you to kind of like, you have to bank it all on the exact meaning of these exact English words you're reading out of this exact book, that might seem a little bit, I don't know what the word is. It might seem a little bit suspicious, right? And in that your relationship with God shouldn't be through a book or a preacher. It should be one-to-one. And that's what he's saying as well. It's like, that's your connection with, in the end of the day, the preacher, the book, and the congregation ain't going to be there when you got to face up to what's going on, right? At the end of your life. That's just my take on it. And that's kind of like, I'm trying to understand like where he's coming from, where other people may be coming from as well. If you throw scripture at everything, you can make everything wrong as well as you can make some things right. And that's where I think that you can be walled off from understanding bigger answers that don't come out of that book. There's a lot of that isn't in that book as well. But if it's if it's in its essence, its beginnings, given the story itself is the word of God, the essence of God is in it, right? So that's just my take on it. I'm, like all of us, we're on the road here. We're learning together. We're growing together, and we're exploring these ideas together. And so good conversation pieces to be had. Let's turn to the crowd and see what they say here. I'm probably someone considered high functioning, never tested my IQ, but without my personal experience in God, I would probably still be agnostic. If you had not personally experienced God. Okay. See, all this time they can't find the missing link. Maybe there isn't one. Let's see. Big Bang Theory versus creation. Well, I've always thought they were kind of one and the same, right? But what are the odds of an explosion ending up in complexity of the universe, even molecules, and the complexity of the I'm just like saying, like, and I also believe in automation. I mean, if we are mapped or made in the image of God, we inevitably move to automation naturally, faster communication, faster. We're automation is part of our thing, right? We've always tried to automate more and more and more and more. Why wouldn't God do the same as the highest intelligence, as the omnipotent one? I don't think that he has to be there pulling levers and pushing buttons, right? Why would you not automate it? If we can automate, why wouldn't he be able to automate? And that's what I see natural law in the parameters of the universe, the ninth veil, the operating system, the wheels turning, right? That he created to turn and to keep things in balance and to make the third dimension happen for us, so that we can manifest on in a physical plane, right? And we can create and we can experience and we can feel and we can do all the things that we can do here because of the nature of the third dimension, which is where we can manifest and become physical with things. Things become physical, become real. And that's, I think, why we also have such a temporary existence here as well, right? That's part of the balance, part of the parameters of our universe here in the third dimension. And what a great place if you're just omnipotent and running around out there to manifest to create a place where that isn't the case, right? Where that isn't the case, where you can actually not be one alone out there, right? You can be many in many different places doing many different things, and look at the things that it creates and what would happen if I did this, and what are the things that would come out of it. And then you have us, right? Then you have this crazy world. But in order for it to work, remember that one video I played where it was really cool. It talked about different ways to create an existence, right? And it was Christian driven, but it was like it talked about, well, we tried to create a world like this and everything was perfect, but it didn't work, and everything went just according to plan, but nobody had free will, right? And then talk about, well, nobody had morality and this happened, right? It destroyed itself. And it went on and on and on. I have to find that one again. That was really good. Everybody liked that one. I think it was in the cool thing segment I did. But remember that? And we took the test, we kind of like looked at it at the end, like which one would you pick? How would you do it? And it was really cool. But that's kind of the same thing, right? Tried many different ways to make this happen and realized that you had to have parameters, you had to have free will, you had to have the self-determination and all these things in order for it to work out right. And in order for it to be balanced, it had to have the ups and the downs, it had to have the good and the bad, it had to have the duality of this third dimension, right? In order for it to function and in order for it to be a place of interest, right? What would you do if you were alone in the universe, right, all by yourself, but you had all the power in the world? But you were eternal. You never would die. You never would, nothing would ever change. You just would be there. You just would be existing in the middle of nothing. What would you do at that time? How would you do? What would it do to you? These are the things we have to ask ourselves about God himself, and what would inspire him to create us, to create life and create the third dimension and create earth and create everything, is that all the things that we have. What would inspire him to do that, right? If anything, we give him something to do, right, Shelley?
Yeah. I think something that inspires that type of massive burst of creation would probably be loneliness.
Okay, I'll look for it.
If he is alone, he might have felt loneliness, and that's why he created such a variety and such a rich world for everybody to exist in.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I do think that loneliness was a huge driving factor. And I think that's why God empathizes. Like he tries to give us little bursts of joy, little bits of beauty to show us that, yeah, you feel lonely, but look what's out there. Look what I made for you. Almost like a comfort.
Mhm.
And we don't appreciate the efforts that were put into everything from a blade of grass to a cloud. Like everything is his creation. I don't think we recognize the effort. I mean, yes, he could just think it and it exists, but without him thinking it, it doesn't exist. So it goes from being a simple thing for him to do, but a monumental part of our lives. So, I mean, that puts a lot of things in scale. Tiny,
Right.
tiny, tiny for him, life shattering or changing for us.
Well, that's why
couldn't exist without it.
That's why I think this is it right here. That's why I started this series out by doing that trip around the universe, right? I said this is the frame of mind you have to be in to tackle these outer veil kind of like talks, and it's that to realize that your life is short, and that you're lucky to be conscious matter. And that's how I started out the evening, by talking too. That's the frame of mind. Once you get in that frame of mind, you here we go. You get in that frame of mind, you can start to understand a little bit better, right? And that you're blessed to be a conscious matter in this universe of no matter, of this of unconscious matter, of that just to have this life is so unique and special. And it doesn't matter. I don't give a fuck if there's aliens somewhere else. I don't care. I'm talking about you and me right here today, and what we have right here, right? It's very unique. You look out there and you see rocks and gas and fire and emptiness, right? Emptiness even between molecules. I mean, in between the desk and the camera. It's like whatever it is, right? That's empty space, but that's something here in this universe, right? And it's so unique to be a conscious matter in this universe then we're giving the blessing of free will as well to do and create as what we want to either succeed or fail on our own. To have that free will, that's more blessings. And then the beauty of what we have, in our eyes of beholders as human beings, we find these things aesthetic, but it doesn't matter. It's like the fact we get the opportunity to find them aesthetic is the true blessing. I found that video for you, Robert. I actually did. And let's see, we got it's like 13 minutes. We can rewatch it if you want to. It's just really interesting. Since we're on the topic, let's rewatch it. Let's put it on let's put on, yeah, we'll put it on record with this video. I like to catalog, someone's watching this as a playlist down the road and is interested in this series and goes for the next. Let me just make sure it's here for them. So if they happen to view it years down the road, we can all watch it together. Here it is. And probably don't have to go that fast.
World with so much
here we go.
We give God a lot of heat for creating a world with so much evil and suffering, and then allowing it all to happen. But I would bet if you were to create your own little world, you would have made it the exact
Me
same
neither,
way,
Robert.
and you wouldn't want it any other way. Now, bear with me here on a little bit of an analogy, and I promise it'll all come together in the end. And stick around, because I'm going to ask you some questions that I think will really, as I'm sure you all know by now, AI has gotten so advanced, you can have a full-on conversation with this thing and not even know you're talking to a bot. And I'm sure you also know that all AI has to be pre-programmed with thousands of protocols to prevent it from, say, taking over the world, starting World War III, or enslaving all of humanity. So in other words, all AI is pre-programmed to serve and do no harm, or to do good and avoid evil. Okay, so imagine the greatest AI engineers on the planet all getting together and saying, let's try to create not the perfect intelligence, but intelligence that is good. So they thought, let's create a simulated world that acts and behaves just like our own, and populate it with millions of these bots who look like us, act like us, and have to live, work, and survive together, just like we do. And of course, the engineers had absolute control over every aspect of this planet, from time and space down to the tiniest little detail, and absolute control over every bot in it. Now, in this first world, every single bot was pre-programmed with the thousands of protocols now perfected to do good and avoid evil. So in other words, every single bot was incapable of making any wrong choices and only able to make right ones. Now, what do you think we would observe in this first world? Well, it was the perfect world. Every bot did exactly what it was programmed to do, and the protocols worked perfectly. They advanced incredibly fast and learned how to provide for themselves and for each other, and not one bot was in need. And since they were incapable of making any wrong choices, there were no wars, no poverty, no oppression, and no evil, and no suffering. The world was all very clean, shiny, peaceful, prosperous, well-ordered, super advanced, and boring. They noticed all the bots more or less acted the same and fell into very predictable patterns, like a fine-tuned machine. So yeah, they created a perfect world, but those in it were not. Because is it really good if you're only doing what you were programmed to do?
Are you really alive?
So the engineers thought, let's do something crazy here. Let's rerun the same simulation, but this time, let's only write the protocols into their memories so they know what's right or wrong, but give them the choice to follow them or not, essentially giving them freedom. What do you think we would observe in this world? Well, as I'm sure you can imagine, it didn't take long for the first bot to break protocol. And from there, all hell broke loose. This bot took advantage of that bot, these bots oppressed those bots rose up against these bots, and the great historical pendulum between the master-slave, the have-nots began. Which of course led to every form of war, poverty, slavery, hatred, hedonism, and the most unspeakable evils.
Hey, Starlight.
Could never have imagined.
Hey, Starlight, how you doing?
And amidst all this newfound squalor, chaos, and confusion, they noticed something else. Cracks emerged in the actual system. Bugs, breakdowns, glitches in the code, system-wide viruses that wiped out generations. Or in other words, what we would call disease. And the metrics of evil and suffering skyrocketed. This discouraged the engineers. But drilling down into the analytics a little deeper, they saw something else. Interwoven between all the spikes of evil and suffering, they saw spikes of goodness, real chosen goodness, sometimes even hero status greatness. And as the metrics of evil and suffering increased, so did this goodness. So despite all the evil and suffering, some of the bots still chose to be good. And that's what the engineers set out to design. But that wasn't all. Blossoming out of the struggle, they saw something that was completely absent from the first world. Identity, individuality, personality,
Ingenuity,
character emerged, leading to expressions of art and culture. And in seeking solutions to all their problems and suffering, the search for truth and meaning began, leading to forms of religion and philosophy, which exploded into science and technology. And while they were nowhere near as advanced as they were in the first world, at least in this world they could say, we did it on our own. Now this world wasn't perfect, far from it, but at least those in it were free to be. Now the engineers found themselves becoming totally enamored by their new creations, but as a result, there was some pushback. We just created a very cruel and unfair world, some argued, and millions of the good that we hope to create are just being wasted every day. So the engineers thought, let's see if we can come up with a way to mitigate all the evil and suffering while still allowing their freedom. So for the first idea, they thought, we already monitor all their thoughts. So anytime anyone's about to make a really bad choice, the system will just intervene and will either edit or overwrite the choice.
Oh my
This
God.
way they're still free, just on a very short leash.
That's not freedom.
Well, this turned out to be a humongous sized disaster.
No, I
They
didn't.
quickly learned that overwriting some of the choices was far worse than not allowing any. And to change that one choice, they had to change the thousands of choices that led to that one choice, which often meant rewriting entire life stories for multiple bots through multiple
Oh my God.
generations. Let's just say this caused such severe brain damage and complete system crashes that the engineers vowed never to touch the code of an individual's mind ever again.
It's kind of like transgender.
For the second idea, they thought, rather than intervening on the choice, let's just quietly and simply intervene on the bad consequence of that choice without touching anyone's freedom. For example, altering the paths of
Right?
bullets, sprouting
Right.
fruit
with
trees
you,
in the
Robert.
desert, or stopping the disease at its outset. This idea, though promising at first, had some unforeseen consequences. First, it eliminated responsibility. After intervening on the millions of bad things that happen every single day, the engineers decided this isn't helping them. They have to learn to help themselves. And on the flip side, by just removing all the really serious things that could ever happen to anyone in a lifetime, it created for a very basic intelligence. There was no strength because there
Yeah,
was
that's
nothing
where
to
we're at now.
overcome. There was no victory because there were no battles. And there was no greatness because there was no adversity. So as much as it pained them, the engineers decided that removing trial and adversity from the AI was like removing the hammer and fire from a sword. So the engineers concluded it had to be all or nothing. Either they themselves had absolute control and took on all the responsibility, or the bots had absolute freedom and had to take responsibility for themselves and for each other. But this still left so many unsettled. It's just not fair. The strong push around the weak and get away with it, and the innocent die. What's the point? So they tried one more solution. What if there was a system of absolute justice? That is, everyone gets exactly what they deserve in the end, and everything is made fair. So in this system, every single bot will be responsible for every single mode of choice and action of their entire lives.
Mm-hmm.
So all those who chose evil will have to pay for it permanently. And all those who chose good will be rewarded permanently. And for all those who suffered tremendously through no fault of their own, yet remained good, will be reimbursed as if they suffered for 1 million lifetimes. So at the end of every bot's life, no matter how long or short that may be, a log is reviewed of every mode of choice and action of their entire lives. And the criterion for this judgment are the original protocols, written into every bot's memory. And the only leniency they'll be shown will be the same leniency they showed others. Is this fair? Now, if you've made it with me this far, thank you. But just stick with me a little longer. You'll see where I'm going with this. Now, some argued, okay, this is fair, but maybe too fair, brutally fair. They forgot all the protocols. They've created their own. They've racked up way too much debt. No one's going to pass that judgment. And how are they even going to know about any of this? So the engineers decided we'll just have to tell them ourselves. We'll upload ourselves into their world, just as one of them, and live among them. And we will be the perfect embodiment of all the protocols. And we'll tell them everything they need to know.
Welcome.
And
What you
show
did.
them everything they need to see.
Night, Wolfie.
And we'll forgive all their debts, no matter how much they may be. And whatever punishments they may deserve, we'll take them onto ourselves, in their place. And to make it even easier, through him, we'll open up a permanent connection. through which we can internally communicate and keep all their systems updated. And all they have to do is follow us. But the choice will always be theirs. Now it's time for the quiz. I'm going to ask you 10 questions.
All right, here we go.
I'm going to go
Play
through
along
them
in the
pretty
chat.
fast, so pause the video and think about it. The first one's a no-brainer. Which world would you rather live in? A perfect world with no evil and no suffering and no freedom? Or a far from perfect world with lots of evil and suffering, but we're free?
Okay. Enter your
2.0.
2.0. Is everybody on for 2.0? I think it's how it turned out last time. I'm gonna go ahead and play it. Just put it in as you go. I'll note it.
Now this is the tough one. Which world would you rather live in? A world where we're responsible for all our messes, or a world where Big Brother is responsible for all our messes?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
definitely
me too.
want to be accountable for my own shit.
Yeah, so this is free will versus authoritarianism, right? That's what
Mm-hmm.
we're seeing. Have a good night, MJ. Take care. Thanks for being here. Good to see you.
Night,
hanging out.
MJ.
Come back soon, okay? All right. So I think we all kind of agree that I know this crowd, we like freedom better than we like authoritarianism.
Mhm.
I know this crowd.
If the engineers intervened and changed the bad consequence of a bad act, would the bots still be free to make that act? Where did the evil and suffering come from?
So yeah, the way he's saying is if someone was intervening and preventing everything bad that could happen from happening to you, would you still have free will? Right? Would it still be freedom?
No, you wouldn't have free will and you wouldn't have any kind of learning experience. There's no opportunity for learning.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no opportunity to improve.
Right. This is one of my favorite
Exactly.
questions from it. Number 4 is one of my favorites. Where did the evil and suffering come from? They come from the
Oh.
bots or the engineers? That's like one of my favorite right there. That's
Well,
one of
if
my
the
favorite.
engineers are the ones that program them and they turned on certain features or turned off certain features, then I would think that would
Engineers
in the-
designed the protocols and made them, give them all the same things they had. They mapped them, right? And so yeah, I mean, the bots are the spots, right? So I think it had to come from the engineers, but I like to say, well, if the bots are making their own choices and the choices they choose create the evil, the protocols were the right things to do, but they had the choice to go against the protocols. The engineers created the protocols. That's what I'm saying. This is a great question. It's great.
That's what I'm saying. The engineers, it's subjective. They decided what was good and evil. And then they gave them that information. They said that they downloaded like the
memory of the protocol.
Pretense for, the memories of like good and evil. But they're the ones who determined what those memories were. They determined what was seen as evil and what was seen as good.
Based on what they knew. They didn't
Yes, based on what they knew.
So where did it come from? Them? Or the choices that were
like
made?
Where'd they get their memory from?
This is how it is. Now, better if you make this choice to harm someone and cause suffering, it's evil. You can make that choice. Or you can choose to do the opposite and not do it, right? So they're saying if they know it's there, but they choose it, that's when evil is created. This is why I'm saying this is probably the best question on that. We can talk about this forever, but it's like, wow, this is she said, wow, I never thought about this before, but is God the creator of evil just because he allows us to choose? Robert's getting it. Where does evil come from? Evil, if you go back to the CTMU, what Chris was talking about tonight, and not that's that be all end all, this is another way of looking at it. He's saying that evil is chaotic. Evil is sporadic, right? It doesn't have a true form. It just manifests itself through the opportunity, right? Opportunity that comes from choice. So is God the creator? God just points out that it can exist. Now, God at the same time could take that away, like in Earth Point 1.0, right? 1.0, but then do you have free will, right? Do you have freedom then, or is that an oppressive authoritarian state of existence, even though it's like that's the utopia kind of thing, but everybody's a programmed cog in the wheel. Nobody's truly living, are they? And what would you have anything to compare it to if you didn't have to compare it to something that's bad, right? There's the duality and the balance of the third dimension. This is why these things are so much fun to talk about, because you can yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Go on.
I was going to say, in a perfect world, there's no need of God, but would there still exist a love of God? Because people don't really, like the majority, I'm not saying all, before anybody gets like, people turn to God in times of need. If you're living in a perfect world, there's not going to be a time of need. So you might not turn to God at all. So the basic thing is, you're not supposed to just go to God because you need him. You go to God because you love him. But would that in a perfect world still exist? If there's no need, would there be a love of God? Would there be an appreciation of God with nothing to compare it to? What are you going to say? Thanks for all this awesomeness, and then just go about your day?
Unless it was programmed into you to have to do it. So that's the whole thing. You don't have free will anyway, so it wouldn't matter. It wouldn't be a choice anymore.
Taking away free will isn't love.
Well, free will is creation too. Remember, it's like, and it's a decision. It's consent, right? Consent in action. Free will in action is consent, right? So you're consenting to love God, or not. Yes, no, maybe you decide, or I'm not doing anything. I'm not deciding at all. These are all decisions, right? These are all free will decisions. It's all consent. That's where I go back to the philosophy of consent, and what consent really means, and how powerful it is, and why everybody's after your consent in this world. Whether they manufacture it, force it, persuade it, or what. Consent is your free will in action, and free will is your gift from God, and that's why it's the most sought after thing in this entire world. That's the conclusions I came to, at least. I'm not the be all and know either, and you guys know that too. But anyways, let's get to the next question here. It's something to think about, guys. Let that one roll around in your mind for a while.
Where did goodness come from?
Same question, different way. Where did goodness come from? Same, the engineers, the bots. Again, I think that when you put them both together, it comes down to that free will and that choice, right? Which is our gift from God. So,
Let's just say all the bots freely chose to follow the protocols, or him. Would there be any evil and suffering? Who decides what their eternal destination is?
Free will. Again, another free will question. Who's deciding it? The architects, the engineers, or the ones who have to decide, make the choices, the ones with the free will? I'm saying it's the bots. I say it's the bots. But you guys can tell me what you think in the comments down here.
Where would the bots be without the engineers?
They wouldn't exist, right?
What was the engineer's intent for creating the whole thing?
Ooh, the meaning of life. That's a big question, isn't it? So I like to dig into these questions and see what they're really getting at. But what was the whole intent? We were just talking about that before I started the video, weren't we? That was the whole point. Playing it.
How would you have done it differently?
How would you have done it differently? Go ahead. Tell us the best way to do things. And what caused him to get stuck? I mean, where did goodness come from? Where did evil come from? Where did the goodness come from? Where did the evil come from? Are they
the chicken, or the egg, basically?
Well, it goes back to these things are energies, right? They're eternal. That's where I come up with the eighth veil, right? As the driving energetic forces behind intention and then ideas, right? And so the driving intention of free will, the driving intention of authoritarianism, and then they manifest into ideas about it, right? Free will, a culture of free will, or a culture of authoritarianism and control that would create a cycle of abuse to power its cycle of control by abusing life itself, the life of others itself for its own selfish evil gain. And now you understand. Now, if anything, you understand the veils of perceptions, the ones that I created, a little bit better, right? That's the point of those things, is to get us to what the root is, the root answers are, the root cause issues, the root cause solutions, and the root answers of these bigger questions out there. But in order to do that, you have to understand what the outer veils are and how they operate. You know, without that, you don't have a bearing on it. You only have others' takes, right? That's the purpose of seeing through all the veils to understand the true nature of reality, which is what unveiling reality is about. We come full circle, didn't we? It came full circle.
I want to thank you all so much for watching, and thank you all so much for your support. I cannot say how grateful I am and how much it means. We are a tiny, tiny ministry, but we want to grow, and we need your help. So if you see any value in any of this craziness, please consider supporting us. I'll
and I did subscribe
post some links below.
Yeah, I did subscribe to these guys. So anyways, I thought that was a very thoughtful, insightful take. I think it was a really, really intelligent way to present it to people. I think the questions they ask at the end are fun, they're thought-provoking, and they help us kind of break out of our routine attention to what's going on today, who's this, who's that, what present battles are we fighting, right? There's bigger questions and bigger answers out there for us all, and that's really the fun part of life too, right? Is chasing down those bigger questions and those bigger answers, because at the end of the day, it really is just about our life and what happened here during our present time, during the eternal now of the third dimension, in our small little lives, is minuscule compared to what the big picture is, isn't it? Yeah, isn't it interesting? They're fun. They're a lot of fun. Robert says the best option is to allow the bots to know what will happen when they make their choices before they make their choices consequences. Isn't that what they laid out the when they downloaded themselves and him? Wasn't that what
I mean, they pretty much was? That's how we live. We know what the consequences are going to be, and sometimes you just go, yeah, fuck it, hold my beer, like, or it felt like a good idea at the time.
Oh yeah, or it's out of our, what condition are we under during the time that we had to make the decision, and what influenced that decision, right? What frame of mind were we in? What health were we in? These are all our daily, midterm, and long-term conditions that we have to deal with, and that's why I'm saying that's where empathy comes in, understanding that when we were all born innocent, love, and light, and we are all going through things. We're all on a different part of our path. And understanding and spiritual, mental, and physical development, right? We're all at different parts and different steps along the way, but we're all here together. That's what's great. But that empathy, that care, that understanding towards one another can make the world a better place. And that's what evil doesn't want us to know. That's what evil wants us to forget. That's what evil does the opposite of, right? Dividing and tribalizing and causing harm and abuse, right? And evil knows that if you break the earliest generation, you'll break the world for several generations to come. And that's what we understand here very well. And that's why we are trying to promote a culture of solutions to that. So we're getting there eventually, but we're all learning and we're all going down that path together, which is beautiful. What's up, Zach? How you doing? Hey, thank you for lurking. I'm happy that you're enjoying the content, man. I appreciate you being here. They downloaded the protocols, but not knowledge of the consequences. So you're saying that if we already knew what would happen after death and what would happen in life and what the purpose of life is, that it may be different. It's interesting, something interesting to think about for sure. Hey, Outpost, how you doing? Good to see you. I don't know. That's a good question, and I think I like the way that you're thinking. I like the way that you put thought into that, for sure. I'm trying now. I have to go back and think about that. Now, what if we did have full knowledge of what would happen after death? If we didn't behave right while we were here, will we have free will, or will we be acting on that presumed persuasion or coercion? And would it be persuasion and coercion to let us know that? Will we be would the the way like a narcissist can pretend to be a good person and then just to get into some situation where they can exploit it? Would that potentially happen if you knew the outcome? Part of their ability to express their inner evil is the fact that they don't fear consequences. They don't know for sure. In fact, they think they got it figured out. There aren't any in most
I know what
cases.
the consequences are, but those don't apply to me.
Could be that too. See, a lot of people who are in recovery stay in recovery because they know what will happen if they relapse. That's true if they can resist it, and but they don't want to be that person, right? They chose to be better, because they had already experienced the consequences of hitting rock bottom, right? So they physically experience the consequence. More like, what if we were just told what the consequences are? We kind of are, right? And certain religions have ways of explaining it, right? The CTMU will say that if God turns away from you, then you will be caught in a hell of your own existence, which makes a lot of sense to me. And in a way, I think I envisioned it differently. Without take the CTMU and put it way aside, like like a month ago when I didn't know what it was, right? And I still felt the same way, and I also feel like there is I never really bought into the fire stuff, and I think there are analogies for things that people would fear. But without taking your physical body with you, you're not really feeling that fire, right? But the torture of being locked alone, we talked about, like, God turning away. Well, what if you were just what was that? What was that movie, or what was it, a movie or a show we were watching, Shelley, where basically it was like your choice would be to be left alone in complete nothingness. Would that nothingness be all white or all black, right? Like a complete dark white, like plain everywhere, right? Always expecting something to come over the hell, to light up, to colorize your world, your lonely world, where you couldn't sleep, you didn't need to eat, you didn't need to do anything. You were just stuck there by yourself forever. That is hell, I think. Or in the dark, where you just don't know, is there something around you? You never know, right? There are two different forms of hell, but in both cases, you're just there, and that's where you stay forever, and nobody's ever coming, and nothing's ever changing. That's hell, right? That's pretty much hellish, right? So, and I always felt like heaven and hell can be places on earth based on your decisions. Like if you're choosing hellish decisions that have hellish consequences, right? Then your life is kind of hell. Like, unfortunately for a lot of addicts, they're making bad choices and their life deteriorates and turns into a living hell. Where on the other hand, someone making good decisions will still have to experience trials and tribulations on earth because of the balance, the nature of the balance of earth, right? Or the 3D universe, I should say. However, for the most part, they're going to be getting benefits from it: family, love, good memories, security, safety, things that mean something to human beings, right? So a heavenly existence.
We hope.
Well, for the most part, a heavenly existence. And I think even in people and have hellish existence have, a good day here and there, right? Let's see. Let's go back to this great conversation going on in here. Say, where was I at? A lot of people recovery. Okay, God, that's where I was on. Going to need a fire here on Tuesday. Oh, okay, well, stay warm. Yep, sociopaths and psychopaths. Yeah, they could exploit it. The Bible says God creates good and evil. I think that just means he created the potential for evil via free will, like to be explained. Good point. When the young don't have consequences, they grow up, they will think they won't have any. Yeah, that's true too. And that young luck sometimes gets people into that situation, right? Well, they're being groomed into believing they don't have consequences and they don't need that. That God didn't make them right. In a lot of cases.
Well, they're being groomed to idealize or to idolize their own identity rather than the miracle that they were created at all. Like they're taking God out of everything.
Yeah,
and then it's not about God. Like, God has nothing to do with anything. This is all you. You decide what you are. No, God gave you the miracle of life. God give it. God could take it away, and people forget that.
Yep.
They forget that.
Yeah, so man, that's what the outer veil is about. Conversations like this. I'll tell you, I love how. I mean, I have you guys come here every a lot of you guys come here every night, or every night that I'm on, and you see the kind of things we talk about all the time,
Every
or
night.
and but yeah, this is the stuff I love to talk about too. We don't get to do this too often, right? To really go into the outer veils. And I try to find more stuff to get us out in the outer veils and have these conversations. There's not too many to have. I mean, this is a big one tonight. This covers a lot of ground. The only one we need to talk about next is like the parameters of the third dimension, the nature of reality in terms of what system are we confined to, and what are the things we understand that to understand our limitations and what benefits and consequences really mean, right? In terms of natural, I think people had an idea of this a long time ago when they created natural law, right? And I think a lot of our laws are based around natural law today. And in that, if you take, taking someone's life and versus defending your own life is, right? How we violate other people's free will, it usually has to do with around free will. So there is a long lecture series by a very what would you call him? No, hold on. You're going to say something a little bit. Sorry. A very controversial figure, but yet a very smart figure around the natural law and what it is.
Passionate and abrasive.
Yeah,
but
he's passionate and
honest.
abrasive. You have to like understand he's an expert at what he's talking about as he kind of breaks you down a lot along the way. Not to say that he has
Kind
all
of like the
solutions.
Bobcat Goldthwait of that, thing.
Yeah. Mark Passio, good. I mean, he's had his ups and downs.
I knew
his trials and
exactly where you were
tribulations in
going
life.
before you went there.
Yeah. But I mean, I've never met anybody that explains natural law better than him and has a better grasp on it. I don't agree with his solutions in general. I don't think that they're viable. I think they're maybe like the ultimate step, but there's many steps in between here and there before we can get to something that pie in the sky. But I do very much agree with his takes on natural law, what they mean, and his conclusions about like how the wrapper of care, the final natural law, and how important care is in this world. So I think underneath that rough exterior and that harsh Philly delivery, he's got a great heart. So we'll have to explore doing that too. And we couldn't be and like I said, we couldn't revisit the CTMU down the road for a more granular approach. I mean, for these type of topics, I think you need to give it a little bit of breathing room to think about it for time. So it might be like something down the road as a further addendum to the series. I think the next place logically to go is to natural law, the parameters of the universe. And like I said, this is a sporadic series, so it doesn't follow a sequence in terms of next week on, right? This is a series of when I find the right thing, I go back to the series and I introduce a new episode to it. Unveiling Reality, however, is a weekly show where we always cover these topics around a lot of the first veil, the early veils, the human veils, right? The ones that are the physical veils that are here in our modern society and what we're dealing with and how we're going to create a better future by counteracting the rigged game that we were born into. That's what Unveiling Reality is generally about. And of course, it is really about everything put together, right? But the series, that's why I have a series for the outer veils specifically, because they, we go into a different line of thought, a different line of thinking. And while it still serves a lot of the same purpose, it doesn't necessarily connect to the weekly show of Unveiling Reality. Though we will bring them up, right? But anyways.
Talking about Mark Passio, guys.
Oh, Mark Passio. Yeah, Mark Passio. Yeah, he's an old school guy, man. He goes way back to, if you were awake, aware, and resisting, decade and a half ago, you might have run into him. He's been doing it for a long time, kind of like Jan Irving. Him and Jan were friends at one time. Trivium guy, Jan, I had on. I need to bring him back. I need to try to get him back on for a face-to-face this time. Maybe he'll come back on and revisit the Trivium with me. I'll have to see. He's pretty content in his life. He's content doing things like Zach's doing right there in that picture. He likes just to be being a dad and hunting, and that's what he's loving doing right now. So I need to check in on him and see how he's doing. Maybe he'll come back on for a revisit to the Trivium at some point. That would be great. A little solution culture special with Jan Irving. But yeah, he used to run with Mark, and then he kind of got on to he became born again. Well, Mark's kind of like I wouldn't call Mark was at one time Mark was a satanic priest, but he escaped it and he realized it was evil, and he didn't want to be a part of it, and he got away from it. I don't know where he falls now. If Aphex is here, Aphex was as a producer for a while. He may know exactly where he lands, but I think that and they had this thing called Gnosticism. And when I see, I had him on the show, and this little, like I talked about at the beginning, that real feminized Bible thumper guy that in the Orthodox cult went around spreading sick rumors about me, saying I was a Gnostic cult leader and I was trying to indoctrinate people. And his little his little friend with the tangly unwashed beard was part of it. And he but he didn't understand, right? He didn't take the time to understand that Jan had become a born again Christian, and it was actually very much probably more Christian than he was. Anyways, so yeah, that's what got that rumor mill started, was because I had Jan on the show, and he went back to the Gnostic media days and saw that. He goes, "Oh my god," started panicking like I said, very feminized male. Anyways,
not like we have 12-hour conversations about the creation and Adam and Eve and Lilith and everything else. No, we never do that.
I never do that. Anyways, let me do this real quick. Speaking of Zach, thank you for the $5 super chat. Just a reminder to Shelly and Heidi that I'm always right and they're always wrong. Thank you, Zach.
Of course you are, honey.
Thank you, Zach, for supporting the channel. I appreciate the $5 super chat.
Stop sniffing the glue.
Let's see, article link.
And next
Beware
time,
government without God.
Try again.
Cleanses. Okay. Nice. All right, guys. I like to thank you guys so much for being part of this conversation tonight. And thank you so much for being here each and every night, and especially tonight. I mean, the Outer Veils series is for a special type of person who really likes to do deep thinking. And I appreciate you guys giving it a try or just coming here and being a part of it. Man, great to see new people in the crowd. Great to meet you, Robert. I got to thank Shizzy for sending you over, because you're a great guy, and I appreciate you being here. I hope you come back and check out some other shows. If you're not politically different, that's cool. But we like to read books on Monday night. We're finishing up Cash Patel's Government Kinksters. We're going to be reading Hegseth's War and Warriors next after that. And we're probably going to do a week in between. I want to do the Mike Benz interview with Tucker Carlson. I looked at both of them today, Tucker and Joe Rogan. I'm going to go with the Tucker Carlson interview, but I want to go through that at some point. So that may be a special there too as well. We may take
Elon
a break.
And Trump drop on Tuesday.
Oh yeah. That's right. We got to go through that interview as well. Elon, Trump with Hannity. That's going to be great. Like to hear what's going on and how things are going to be shaping up in this world. And also, so that there's that. We may take a week off from the UFO alien rabbit hole, even though Greer just put his foot in it. He put his first foot in. How am I going to get out of this world? I realized the other day he's probably on his retirement tour right now, but he was cool, man. Thanks, Robert. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you being here, and thank you for subscribing. And we look forward to seeing you again in the future. But he just put his foot in it, trying to say, well, the catastrophic disclosure is just going to be terribly wrong. He's already trying to backtrack a little bit. I predicted it when he first came out, and he inevitably comes out strong, like this is getting ready to happen, and then finds a way to back off like a champ. But the great thing about it is the comments that are out there. That people are sick of it. They're feeling it. And they're getting over it. They're stopping that cycle of abuse here sooner than later. So we could take a week off perhaps and go with the Ben's interview. But I do want to do on that at some
hopefully
point.
You'll have the Patel confirmation as well.
Yeah. It could be that we just do that as that interview as part of like next week or something like that. And the Old School Watch Party Sundays, I think we need to rename it. Maybe it needs an overhaul. because I think
There we go.
we've run out of old school documentaries, and we're about to run out of old school movies. I don't know. I guess there's still a lot, but I mean, they get really bad at some point. I like it though. You guys like the old school watch party Sundays?
It's time
What
for a
aspects
change.
do you like? Yeah, but we can discuss how we can optimize or upgrade the show. Or I was thinking of like winning truth Sunday or something like that. Like where we kind of just have a show and we do something. I don't know. And then there's also opportunities to do things like tonight and additional interviews that we can't fit in during the week that we really want to do. We don't want them to get old, right? So Sundays is a good night for that. And anyways, that's that, and this is what we're gonna do. And we appreciate each and every one of you being here this evening. Shelly, final thoughts.
No, I got nothing.
Really, come on. You gotta make a good exit here. What
I
you
gotta
got?
make a good exit. What I thought it was very thought provoking. I thought it was very interesting. He had a lot of good takes on religion, a lot of things that I've thought before where you kind of trip yourself up and you kind of get caught in the thought and forget to go with the faith part. I
Well,
did
final
see
thoughts
him
to the
do that a
crowd.
couple times.
To the crowd.
But
Anything you want to say on your way out?
no, I'm
You
done.
don't want to say goodnight to everybody? Thanks for coming.
Night,
anything like
guys.
that?
Love you. I'm really tired and I'm in a lot of pain. So there you go. Mwah.
There you go. And we all wish you well. All right, cool. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate each and every one of you every time in every way. And I'll see you very soon. And until next time, everybody, stay based and keep on winning.
This is a friendship that'll never